Okay.
Muted.
Morning, Commissioner Ed Rothstein. It is Thursday,
Unmuted.
April 8th, and we have a morning and afternoon session. They're both work sessions on dealing with our Carroll County budget. All decisions being made again, and we're going to continue to share this, are not final decisions. These are work sessions, and we still have quite a ways to go. As always, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance and take a moment to reflect on things that are happening, the unfortunate incidences that happened around Fort Detrick in Frederick County the other day, and hopefully for a fast and strong recovery of those that were injured, is my thoughts. So please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's jump right into the work session. And where we left it off on Tuesday were a couple of things. One, we as a group, individually, highlighted our priorities. We then began discussions on some of the discretionary dollars that we have within our budget and the programs, and putting placeholders in there on how we're going to deal with some of that discretionary dollars. I think a path forward is this morning looking at ongoing dollars or ongoing money, and some of the priorities that we have, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and put placeholders in on how we want to deal with some of our priorities. And then this afternoon, let's talk about one-time dollars. I feel like let's leave on a high note with one-time funds this afternoon.
I want to switch that around based upon some questions I have today, so I don't want to necessarily stick to that schedule.
Where do you want to go?
Well, let's just see where the questions go, because I don't want to put off the one-time money conversation, because I've got questions that I think will affect the rest of the budget that I want to get answered.
Yeah, I have some questions too.
Okay.
Let's get
Yeah,
some
that's
questions
fine.
out of the way.
That's fine.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions this morning, so I'd rather tackle those first. Well,
Okay.
do this first, but
yeah,
let's not separate.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm just looking at how to facilitate. Again, reminder, this room, we have 3 air purifiers. We have the plexiglass. We're separated. We have masks. If you choose to wear, we need to continue to be diligent when we're in closer contact with each other to wear masks and not let our guards down. It's appropriate. We do lead and set the example. So let's continue to do that. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't have live sessions. But right now, I think we're pretty comfortable. What about looking at the priorities that we have put in place? Like all the priorities that we talked about the other day, there were some commonalities from the priorities.
Commissioner, before you,
yeah,
okay, can I run through what?
Sure.
You mentioned priorities. We do have a second sheet there, trying to capture things. Actions that you took on Tuesday. Commissioner Ross pointed out. These are all actions along the way. This defined action actually. The one thing you did was saying to continue the transition plan for fire and EMS as it proposed. We talked about decreasing transfer in the solid waste fund. You get a little bit more information about that for a second. Increase the recycling tipping fee by $25 and reducing ag credits by $1 million a year. The transfer of solid waste, as far as that discussion went, see that little table right underneath there, starting with $2.8 million negative, that would be the savings from transfer. And you see $1 million a year for ag credits. And to a new bottom line based on those actions, beginning with $8.1 million for 2 and negative 7.1 The next page is the priorities. Page after that captures that.
People can hear me now.
Start again.
Captures the transition schedule. Then the next one is solid waste. And when we were discussing reducing the transfer and how that could help our plan, I was saying, okay, there's more to this story and it's not as simple as this. We tried to put together more of that story now. So the top row is the cost of transfer in the solid waste fund. Then you see the reduction in transfer. There are things that we need to add back in though. We have a larger landfill, we're going to have more leachate, which means greater leachate disposal costs. That's where you see that $640,000 and growing over that time. That's an estimate. Of course, we don't know that number. And to be fair, in any one year, we never know what's going to happen. A lot depends on, the weather. We would also need to buy 2 more tankers to handle the volume that we would expect. That's at $560,000. That's a one-time cost, but of course, that comes with maintenance and fuel and insurance and the need to replace it someday. Now, this would also lead us to basically need to start now on cell 4. And you see we have costs built in for doing that. There's approximately $25 million projected cost for cell 4, a new transfer station, and a new homeowners use area. And I just need to point out there that right now we don't know where the transfer station or the homeowners use area would go. And it's possible we would say there isn't even room. But that $2.5 million, you'll see that beginning in fiscal year 25, when we would expect that the bonds would have all been sold, you're taking on about $2.5 million of new debt service payments. And then because of the shorter life of the landfill, that accelerates the need for the post-closure expense. That's at $250,000 growing to $300 and some thousand that you see near the bottom. So after you take out the savings from transferring less and then add back in the implications of the others, you see a new bottom line for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund and the impact to your total bottom line. So in the first 3 years, this will be a plus. It would actually free up money for you. But beginning in fiscal year 25, this becomes a net negative and actually puts us in a worse situation.
Worse than we're in right now.
Yes.
What?
That's why I was trying to say it's not as simple as it sounds.
Ted, one question. I know the leachate goes up. Is the pipeline or sewer line to the landfill out of the question?
I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible to do it. And if it is, we don't have any cost estimate for it.
We have nothing at the present time, but here again, we have some one-time monies.
Yeah, but
I don't know, even to start it or put something toward it. Is it possible? Because we're going to be needing something eventually. They're running the trucks back and forth, and I've been down 140 many times, and that truck can't make the turn, and the back end's hanging out into the southbound lane. It's a matter of time till we get hammered on one of these, or somebody gets killed in that event. But what happens here? I think we need to look long term on this whole thing, and that is that line, sewer line, with the town of Westminster needs to go in, or at least we need to start talking about it.
And I don't know if Public Works has had conversations with Westminster. It would seem to me that the starting point would be, is Westminster even willing to consider it? If they're not, then there's nothing more to do. If they are, then some time could be put into cost estimates. I don't see any reason to think that that would significantly reduce our costs. I mean, we'd have different costs, but it's going to be a big cost of creating something like that. But we can, well, Taylor, do you know, has Public Works ever spoken with Westminster?
I don't know that they, I don't
Stephanie.
think they've
Oh, Stephanie.
spoken with Westminster, but I believe they've had internal discussions.
Okay,
And I have an email here from them that says, no, they have not had a conversation with the city at this point. So the city would need to okay it. That's definitely the next step.
Which
I
Which will
don't wanna
take a
leave it
couple
there.
years in
I
itself.
believe about 12 years ago or so,
maybe, you're right.
there was a large discussion with the city at the time. And the city, I wasn't here, I don't know all the details. I don't want to leave it with the idea that, this board with the idea that staff hasn't done, something to possibly rectify the situation. When the city of Westminster was starting the process of their PNR upgrade, their wastewater treatment plant, which includes their effective facility, there was discussion, and I believe very detailed, very long, very involved discussion and negotiation between the city and the county about how to handle that. And it's always been my understanding that the city's, it was just a hard no for some reason. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't believe it's an easy, thing for the county to go back and say, but let me find out more about it. Our legal department and our solid waste. I think there's a lot more information to this story than just we have an ask.
You know what I'm afraid of? I mean, we have a short time to do the budget. And Dennis, your idea here is, it's a good short time fix, at least for 3 years, a couple years. We need time to work on this, and it's probably going to take all year to get a lot of these questions answered, where we're going to go and this whole thing. And Ted, I appreciate you're going through all this, how one interacts with the other. Except we have a couple weeks now to put some plan together, and we have a 3-year plan that works, but after that it falls apart and gets worse. As you said, we need to actually work on this over the next period of 12 months and get this plan solidified and down to, I hope, 0.
Right, well, if we use one-time money as one-time money, and I know you hate to do that, Ted, but if we use one-time money as one-time money, that $25 million, we could use one-time money if for all of that or most of it or part of it. And that would take that debt service down to cut it in half or maybe reduce it completely, which completely changes the picture in the out years, of those years 4, 5, and 6. If we did that, we have the one-time money to do that. We have money in the bottom line of each of these first 3 years. And that's one-time money, so I'm not using this ongoing. So we could use part of that and part of the one-time money we have right now and take that 25 million off the table.
yes,
We could do that. And that changes this whole picture right here.
That dips heavily into one-time money.
Correct.
And there's
What?
a lot of other priorities here. And I'm not convinced that this is even something we should be messing with. I mean, I'm not convinced that we shouldn't continue to allow our staff to look at alternatives and just keep moving forward the way that it is. Instead of trying to it's almost like the little guy at the dam with his finger in there. I mean, that's what we're doing. That's all that we're doing. And if he moves, get out of the way.
Well, we haven't done anything, and not just us, I'm not saying, but nothing's been done since they started transferring trash to Pennsylvania or wherever it was going to. And ever since that started, there's been a deficit. Nothing has been done to help fix that deficit. This is a step, I think, in the right direction. And we don't have to use all the one-time money, but if we use part of the one-time money and part of the money on the bottom line that we have left over, we can take that 25 million off the table. And then it's a whole different scenario. And does it fix it completely? No, but it sets it up for, I'd say, quite a while.
I guess my point is this a problem that we're trying to solve? Because Steve, you're saying it's not as much of a problem that
Well,
we're trying
based
to
upon
solve.
the other priorities that we're getting hit with, the landfill is what it is. I mean, we're trying to cherry pick one area
Yeah.
in order to try to free up money in another area. And cherry pick in this area, to me, I'm not so sure it's of importance right now on my list, because we've got so many other things going on. And in reference to your comments, County Administrator, I would suspect that the names and the faces have changed drastically since those negotiations went on. So I would suspect that perhaps there would be a different approach. Because if you said that's before you were here,
It's,
then the names and the faces have drastically changed,
Ain't gonna change again.
and they're going to change again.
well, certainly, I'm trying to find out the history so we know where we're starting.
Certainly do appreciate that, but
Well, since you wanted to talk about one-time money, Steve, why don't we go there? Look at your, after we're done this part, that, after you've done your papers.
Yeah, just-
Go look at one-time money, see how we want to use that, and see what's left.
yeah, I would agree with that, Dennis, because I think as we go through this, that's the elephant in the room here. What
Is
can
what?
we do with the one-time money?
Okay.
And I've got a lot of questions about this one-time money, what we can and can't do. And I'm probably going to ask some stupid questions this morning. But I don't know that since we've been here, this is our 7th budget. I don't know that we've ever had this amount of one-time money in front of us. So I've got a lot of questions. And it might make some of you uneasy. I don't care, because trust me, I've been uneasy for the last 48 hours with the emails, the phone calls, the text messages, and everything else. I know that's part of it, but some of these folks, I hope, are watching, and I hope if they are watching, they'll pick up on some of these things. We do these budgets in front of the camera, and there's hard questions that need to be asked, and I'm going to do that today, because I know we're early into this, but I've about had it.
I mean, nobody's saying not to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, nobody's saying not
Right.
to ask.
So I
hard
think we've got to
questions.
get,
I mean, listen, I agree, and I know this is your 7th budget, and I got it. It's our 3rd budget for me,
Right.
at least. And I've done other budget. We've talked about this, and I agree. Nothing's going to be a stupid question, because where you're going to go, I expect, is using this very large one-time amount of money, and how can that transition to either ongoing money or onto
You got-
solving other
what do
problems?
you got, a little ESP going over there?
No, I mean, it's the same questions I asked,
Yeah,
and I staffed over the last couple of days. I mean, and we're going to find there's pros and cons.
yeah.
The challenge is, and I apologize, is it's not necessarily putting the finger in the dike. It's putting a Band-Aid on something that is much larger than the Band-Aid can actually hold.
I agree.
Stormwater management, solid waste, I think it's obviously not one of the sexy topics we want to talk about, but it is significant, that has gone in the wrong direction. And if we don't address it, it's going to be very, very large problem,
But
in the future.
But my argument to that is, I've watched our staff.
Yeah.
And they've come an incredibly long way in a very short amount of
Yeah.
time with
Yeah.
alternatives.
Yep.
Of the likes that we have never seen,
Yep.
any of
Yep.
us, since we've been in office. We just rolled right along with the landfill, and, you can't touch the landfill because it's the sacred cow. And do something with the landfill and see what happens, see what blows up. So I will say that I think I have a ton of confidence that that our staff is going to continue that journey that they're on to find that
Alternative
that
ways.
fix, if you will, or that repair,
Mhm.
because they've come a long way. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant
I know.
to throw something at it now, just to make other line items look better.
We should have actually been to that point by now. We have their recommendations to get it so 0 from the budget being transferred back, but we're not there. What would happen in this if we continue to keep the tipping fee up and don't landfill that amount? How much would that change us, I wonder, in this budget? We keep the transfer going and don't, and raise the tipping fee.
So fix part of it.
I mean,
The tipping fee of $25 to keep the transfer going, that's my calculations around $300,000, just off the top of my head.
Which is probably wrong, but that's just your.
Very close, though.
within a million. No, I'm just looking, there's a lot of questions here and, we have to have the answers to this in the near future. I don't think it's gonna be in time for the budget, but this is one, I think our goal is to get this bottom line to zero.
And it very well could be that we have some really better answers with our next budget that we're gonna be dealing with
Right.
in the short time period of a year, right?
Yeah.
So,
But this is our fault for not jumping on this earlier and pushing it.
well,
And I mean, I think we had other priorities.
Yeah, but I think we have been looking at this off and on since we've been in office. We really have.
we have.
We have, but we've never solved it and we
No.
keep giving direction and our poor staff running this way and then we change direction and run this way.
Well, but my point, I think, though, is
Yeah.
I want to be clear here. Our staff this time, over the last 6, 7, 8 months,
Come a long way.
has made phenomenal
Yep.
Steps, positive steps
I agree.
in getting to a fix.
Because we have given them the latitude to do
Right.
that.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but I agree with you, Dennis. I think maybe, just like we did the other day, let's get the fire and EMS was the elephant in the room at the time. I truly think there's a big pot of money sitting here. That's next.
Well,
That's what I think. It's sitting right there. That then dictates where we go elsewhere.
Let Ted finish this and then we'll go to the one-time money.
Well, I think it's about time to wrap it up for the day. Okay, just two thoughts about solid waste, hoping not to open that all back up again right now. But I didn't say that another piece of that, look at that scenario is you reduce your landfill life as it exists from 113 years to 24 years. And on Commissioner Frazier's thought about using cash to do the capital projects, we didn't assume that because we didn't want to assume that was your priority for the money. But yes, if we put cash in, then it changes the debt figures. Then the last thing, Commissioner Wance had asked, what are the ways that somebody's pay can change? And HR and I put together something for you to say, these are the various paths to somebody's paycheck getting bigger. First, cost of living. We talked a lot about this the other day. This moves the scales. It tries to offset the impact of inflation. But you have to remember, somebody who's already here, when those scales move, it's not changing them relative to somebody new. Then there's a service increment. Now, sometimes people get confused about this. Carroll County has no step plan. Carroll County school system has a step plan, but your employees have no step. The thing we have that most looks like that would be when you include what we call an increment. So there's a COLA, and then there's an extra pay that somebody gets, and it does move them within the scales. So if I've been here for 3 years and somebody new comes in, I'll be making more than them if we've given increments.
But we do have grades though, right? There are different grades, which are similar, I think, to steps.
But there's no steps within each grade.
So you go from a grade to a grade, how?
By getting a promotion,
But then there are some that get these promotions that get money in between promotions. That was where I was going. I mean, there are ways that folks have asked for money in between, and I wanted to know how that occurs.
Do we have flexibility, like a bracket within each grade that allows us to do that? Or, I mean, I honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm used to step, through grades, but because that's what you're asking is how do you?
Yeah, I know we don't have steps, but how do you get from a grade? I don't know the grades off the top of my head. I should. After,
C5 through C15.
right. So how do you go from a C5 to a C10?
Okay,
Is it based on longevity?
no, it's You're still thinking in terms of a step plan.
Okay,
And those
okay.
grades are not related to a step plan at all. All they
Okay.
are is saying, how are we classifying our jobs?
The job
So
itself.
a C5 is going to get a certain level of pay. A C12 is going to get a different level of pay. But you don't go from a C5 into a C12 unless
Got
you
it.
get a
Okay.
new job.
But
Okay,
is
you're
there a
right. Okay.
bracket within each grade that allows us flexibility to provide either bonuses or salary increases within each grade?
That's the increment, that's what the increment does.
What-
So if you're a C5 and, you know, and you get an increment award, then you're making $10, you know,
Right.
previously, and there's a 2% increment, now you're gonna make $12. And that C5 grade goes, let's say, from $10.
2%.
I know, well, we told you, open session math never works. That was a very generous 2%.
Yeah, that was.
But it goes beyond. The C5 grade, let's say, goes from 10 to 20. And you move up by an increment in there, but if you never get an increment, then
So the increments within the grade now the second question to that then is, each job, a bureau chief, is there a bracket of grades that a bureau chief may have? Or is a bureau chief a C10 or C11 and that's where they stick until they're promoted to the next grade?
The last thing you said.
so
Okay.
they're promoted to
Or
director, deputy.
or someone asks for them to be moved. We've got a request right now from Citizen Services. They want to move somebody from a C something to a C something.
And
Higher.
same job?
No, so that's a reclass.
That's different.
process, Basically.
Okay, so see, here's another,
Well, they're all here, they're all listed. So that's actually changing. What's identified there is that this job that had these set of responsibilities previously now has these plus or these minus. Sometimes you can be reclassified down too. So a reclassification process reviews and we started the board gave money, I think 6 years ago. To start, I'm pretty sure it was 6 years ago, to start a reclassification process. And all staff will review, 1/3 of the staff will review each year for the next 3 years. And what Human Resources did is they looked at every job and made sure that those jobs, because we found those job creep. So we made sure that this position is still doing that body of work. If Human Resources found that that position was doing more work, then they potentially reclassified it from a C1 to a C5 to C6.
okay, is
If they
that,
found they were doing less work, they might have gone from a C6 to C5.
okay, does that work in every grade?
When reclassifications are done, they look at, just for purposes, our purposes, they were looking at, yes, across the board. And they took, Human Resources took 1/3 of the staff that sort of made sense to them for their purpose each year for 3 years. And so that was done for 3 years. This particular request from Citizen Services is very similar to that. They've identified that this job is really more than they want.
So what an incredibly complicated process. Because when you're in a department somewhere, and I come from a department where you were on this step, and then you moved to this step, and then you moved to this step, and that was it. But you're suggesting that with grades, that someone could come in and say, hey, I'm doing notebooks now. I didn't do that last year. I think I need more money.
No, that's not what we're
That's
saying.
not what we're saying.
Okay, well then give it to me in layman's terms because I don't understand what you're saying. Maybe if the rest of you do, we can move on.
No, keep going.
Reclassifications are intended to say, is this job still the job we thought it was before? Is it still classified appropriately? Is the pay attached to it still appropriate? Now, Roberta said 6 years ago, there was money put in for reclassifications. Actually, reclassifications happen every year during normal times, but we stopped for a number of years at the Great Depression, and we weren't doing the reclassifications because we knew there was no money to support any additional costs. Then what Roberta was referring to, then we did say, okay, we need to get this going, but we knew there was a big backlog at that point. So some money was put into the budget to deal with that. But this happens, this is an ongoing process. HR is once every 3 years looking at every job in the organization. And that's not just to increase the pay, it's to say, is there any reason why this should change? In many cases, the classification stays exactly as it is. They're saying, okay, we've looked at it, it's still what it should be. And as Roberta pointed out, a reclassification could be to say this job has changed in a way that makes it more than we once thought it was, or makes it less than we once thought it was. And to your point, right at the end there, one problem we face is when we're not giving salary increases or not giving sufficient salary increases, there is pressure then to start trying to take the route you just said. The people will look for an alternative and say, well, I didn't get a salary increase, so I'm going to argue that I should be reclassified in order to get a salary increase.
Okay,
But that's not how we want it to work.
but that's
not
how it
it's
works in
intended to work.
some instances.
Well, I'm not saying it's never happened, but I'm saying that's not what it's there for.
Okay. And who makes that determination then?
Human resources,
Makes what determination?
whether a job gets reclassified.
Oh,
Strictly human resources. No one else comes into play with that. Interesting.
well, you know, and that, we're getting off budget topic, but administrative, you know, there may be a certain level that we want to consider where, you know, at a certain level, it should stay within human resources, you know, at another level, human resources consultation with you, CAO, and then at a very senior level, it goes to us if we're talking about reclassifying
Well,
a bureau chief or a division chief or something like that.
directors.
Directors.
The board decides.
Okay, so we do
Well,
have a
not-
responsibility as a board of commissioners to determine the reclassification of directors. At a lower level, it's, I would expect, human resources is in consultation with you, and then at a base level, it would be human resources. Is that a fair statement, or, you know,
I didn't want to make this,
yeah,
I-
no, I know, but
I,
it's,
because salary, and you know, you all saw my
Yep.
email. Salaries are a hot topic.
absolutely.
And that's a big part of our budget. Dick, you pointed out it's probably the largest percentage of the budget that we have here. So I wanted to get down and
Absolutely.
absolutely know the exact details when we're starting to pay these folks. And, you know, I think it's important and it's respectful for everybody in the workforce as well. And of course, that's a product of doing all this discussions in front of the open cameras, unfortunately. But, you know, it needs to be said so that, for me, I wanted a better understanding of how folks get paid. That way we can, and it's always been incredibly complicated to me. I've figured out most of it over the years, and I probably still won't know it all when I leave here. But, you know, I come from, again, where you knew exactly what you were going to make. And there was no avenue for you to walk in to your boss and say, you know, I think I deserve more because I'm doing more. There wasn't. This was the step, and here's the next step, unless, or you got promoted. There was none of this in between stuff of okay, let's reclassify or whatever. So
See, you're focusing though on an idea that people are saying, give me more. And what I'm saying is,
but that's what people are saying, Ted.
with an occasional exception, that is not how it works. But you're talking about how it was in Baltimore County, you know, is very relevant to this conversation and to the presentation that Robin Hooper did to the other day when she was talking about one of the problems we face with people deciding to stay here or come here is lack of certainty about pay. in what you're describing, there was greater certainty, and that
Right.
is a problem for us.
Right.
But we do not have that step
Right.
program here. So there's not, HR can't say, Mr. Frazier, you're considering this job. This is what you can look forward to if you come here. They have nothing like that
Right.
to offer. And now, as far as reclassifications go, I would be almost certain that in Baltimore County, they have a reclassification process because they would still have the same things to deal with. Has a job changed over time? Is this job here still comparable to this job over here, or should they be rated differently somehow? It just wouldn't have come up for you in the same way that you're talking about it,
True, okay.
here. Okay, so
This is a very, sorry, this is a very common, very, normal human resources way of assuming, of assuring that there are what's called internal equities across the organization.
See,
Yeah.
you and I are,
Yeah, we know.
and you
it's-
two are
Right,
too.
yeah.
And no disrespect, Eric, I'm not trying to alienate you
Right.
here, but
Everybody knows
we
exactly
knew
how
what
much
we
we
were
make.
going to
Right.
get unless, and if you permitted, you
Yep.
knew that. So it
Absolutely.
just adds complication
Yeah.
to the most hot
Correct.
button topic that we're discussing in this budget, and
Absolutely.
that's salaries.
And,
That's
no,
why I wanted to get, and I don't want to get in and change things at this point, but I think it was important to bring some of these points out because it is our largest expenditure.
absolutely agree. And I think, because that line that's bolded up there, the process is subject to budgetary approval. Processes, rules, regulations are things that we can discuss in changing and adjusting to do what's right. And we should. We shouldn't just say, well, that's the process or that's the way it is, so let's just keep moving. But because I agree, everybody knew exactly how much I was or was not making, whether, however you want to look at it, retired, how much I am, because it's public record. I mean, there's no doubt in that.
And I don't think anybody's arguing against having that. The reason we don't is it will be a greater expenditure.
So that was my question.
Right now, in any given year, you can say, no, we're not going to give an increment. If you have a pay plan, you've already, I mean, I guess in theory, you could say we're not going to do it. But I mean, the assumption is it's going to be there and we'd have to budget that way.
Right.
You know, that would fundamentally change things.
Now, as we're moving forward, we're talking about county employees, police and fire?
Well, the sheriff has a step program.
Yes.
Your employees don't.
But the fire doesn't at the present time?
They would not right now. They would be an employee of yours, just like any other.
Okay. Which is going to bring me into my other comment here, or question. All right, we're growing as a county and we're going to have extra employees, 400 with the sheriff and fire in the next couple of years, probably, at least. And then plus our county employees are growing. Is there a way to put an impact fee in place to offset some of these as we're looking ahead? I mean, as we're growing, new development coming in, or whatever, a fee on that. The school system had it when they were growing to have an impact fee. Can we do such a thing for county public safety? To have an impact fee that automatically is designated just to these areas? I know it's not constant, but it helps offset some of the funds we have.
I don't believe there's any way to do an impact fee for ongoing costs like that. When you say the school system had an impact fee, that was for building schools. That was to provide capacity for growing enrollment.
Why couldn't we have one?
I don't believe the idea of an impact fee allows you to go there. You know, it's not an appropriate use of an impact fee.
Yeah, I'd say even if you did, let's say for sheriff's department or for fire and EMS, the impact fee would be to build a new precinct or a new firehouse or something like that. As the impact fee was for schools, were to build a new school or it's had addition to a school or something of that sort. So if it was similar to that, that's what the impact fee would be for. It wouldn't be for salaries, wouldn't be for hiring additional people.
Well, okay, that's the way we have it now. I was just wondering if it could be. That way we'd have some designated funding coming in every year to help offset some of these increases that we're going to see.
I understand the desire. I'm just saying an impact fee doesn't get you there.
It would help with infrastructure, but not with,
Right.
Yeah, if we needed to be
Right.
building, and you need to be careful here too. Yeah. Impact fees, and there's a lot of law and cases about impact fees. So when I say what you can do, it's because of case law that I'm saying this. You have to be, if you're going to put an impact fee on development, you have to be able to demonstrate that what you're going to spend the money on is to provide the same level of service to a growing population as you had to your old population. So right now, our population is not growing very, very quickly. So it would be difficult even to make a case right now for an impact fee to do buildings because we're not going to be able to demonstrate that what they call that nexus between the benefit and the cost.
What about any other designated revenue coming in that would be there every year for this? I know we do it for school construction. You know, we have a percentage each year comes off of,
It's off your local income tax.
yeah.
So
That's called
you've
taxes.
established a tax rate. You just decided how to use a portion of that
Right.
revenue.
I was somewhere that, you know, offsets some of this. It has, you know, I know we have limited resources coming in as far as funding sources, but in the areas that we could designate a portion of that every year they know, people know, hey, this is going for salaries of public safety or local.
Well, yes, you could in theory do that. But if you're dealing with the same pot of money, if you want to designate some of that revenue for
Right.
one use, you're
Right.
taking it away from some other use.
Right.
And the money we put aside for school construction, I would argue is fundamentally different than starting to kind of set aside money for operating purposes. You know, you have operating revenues come in, it's all going into one big pot. You have expenditures, they're all coming out of that pot. The more you start to say, well, we're going to tie this piece of the pot to that use and this piece, will just complicate your lives or somebody else's lives in the future sitting at those desks when you're trying to say, well, how do we make things work? And what you're really doing, you'd be saying, we are establishing that this is the first priority for this money, no matter what else is happening. And, you know, we've been there before. You know, the school system at times has argued, they had their history wrong, but they said, well, we used to get 50% of your revenue. We should still get 50% of your revenue. Even if you buy that conceptually, it misses that there's a lot of things going on. We get new mandates for costs that we didn't have before. If the school system always gets the same thing, then that means that money is by default coming out of other things, no consideration for what you're going to do here. It would be the same here. You know, if you say, well, we're setting aside that money for law enforcement salaries, you're saying that takes away any discussion of priorities in the future. You've already established that is the priority.
So, you know, we're going down this trail. I think we should continue to go down it. Which is interesting is if we take the revenue coming in, the taxes, and we do partition it out and say this is a safety, security, fire, EMS, police, whatever we want to say, however you want to, you know, define it and partition it. That's exactly what you're saying. If we decide as a board of commissioners to increase our taxes and call it whatever we want to call it, we're doing the exact same thing. We're partitioning the greater sum, you know, the bucket of revenue. We're just identifying it up front as a fire, EMS, police, you know, emergency service, whatever it is. We're just increasing the tax base coming in. So the fundamental question is not necessarily increasing our taxes, but do we want to have the willingness to partition our taxes to do what you said and lock us into that money will be used for X? I don't know, But I mean, that's the fundamental question. It's not even, are we willing to bring in more taxes? Because I don't want to see that happen. I mean, I made that relatively clear, but I never thought about partitioning the revenue coming in already to be used for salaries or whatever
I'm
it is.
looking at recruitment and retention.
Well, of
It's
course.
a key area here. And I think if, you know, we're in the process now, or going to be, of hiring EMS people. Coming in here, okay, where am I? What, you know, and I think you need to look at, you know, some of these guys are gonna be looking at their future. I think the younger one's looking at salary more, and if you get older into it, they're looking at benefits and things. Okay, here's the whole picture. If I come in here, this is where, you know, we know the state or the county's gonna have this amount designated for this, and I'm gonna at least be promoted or getting some additional funding each year, rather than being at the mercy of the county. Well, no funding this year, no funding this year. And Dennis, you and I lived through that for about 7 years. No, just flat line, nothing. That's hard to deal with a lot of times.
It is.
Now, you know, I think like a lot of these guys go out and get part-time jobs, I know, or work for another area which I think is great. The fact is, they make up that salary difference working elsewhere, like the rest of us all have done. But
I worked 4 jobs when I was in the
Yeah, I
fire
was gonna
department.
say, I think we all did.
we all have done that just to
And
make
it was
up the
accepted,
difference.
it was accepted back then, but something in
Right.
society has changed today where if you work more than one job, it's frowned upon.
Well, sorry, I don't agree with that.
Well, that's society today though, Dick.
It's
And
okay to go out and do that, and I know everybody works other jobs and for extra income or whatever, but I'm just bringing up ideas and
But does it
thinking
co-
through this.
I agree, but does it come, it comes back to, are we looking at the revenue coming into Carroll County, our taxes? And are we willing to partition a part of that revenue to focus on emergency services, fire, EMS, and police, or sheriff's department? So regardless if we're willing to increase the tax base, are we willing to, you know, break that out? And if we're willing to break that out, then we should look at that first before looking at, you know, increasing taxes. I mean, it would definitely limit or it would limit our abilities if we did that, and we'd be robbing Peter, paying Paul, you know?
I mean, to be honest with you, if I'm just hearing about it right now, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to tie my hands, and that's basically what we're doing. We're tying our hands. We're gonna say we're gonna have this percentage to go for this, and the rest we can use, but this, whatever percentage it might be, I have no idea, 20%, 15, I have no idea. Let's say 20. That 20%, the only thing you use that for is emergency services.
Right.
That's it, nothing else. Well, that ties our hands, it ties the future board's hands.
That's
unless,
correct.
Of course, to get a,
Yeah.
to go change it.
yeah,
I'm not willing to tie our hands to the future's board's hands by doing that.
it,
I think it's better if we all sit around like we are right now and try to make the decisions,
yeah.
as difficult as they are,
Mhm.
to move this along. I mean, I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but I completely disagree with that.
Other counties have done it, and they think that they're special by calling it out, but they're doing the exact same thing. It's income tax. They're taking taxes that are coming in, and they're just saying,
It's
we're gonna use it for this, but it's,
Well,
I was
Frederick
looking more
did it.
impact by
but it's the same pot of money.
It's,
Well, Frederick they had a fire tax, so it was a separate tax. It wasn't partitioning their property tax. It was separate,
But
but
they,
they've
what
since
they did
rolled
was
that
they
in.
added a tax.
Right,
They
they put
added
more money
an
in.
additional tax, and they called it out for fire. We either have the ability to partition our tax revenue coming in, or we can, you know, create another tax on the people and call it a fire tax or whatever we want to call it, fire, EMS, police, which would also limit just what you said. It would, we don't touch it. That's where it goes. Are we willing to do that?
I mean, if we're going to increase some taxes, and I think no one actually wants to do that, but if we're going to, I would think that the Board of Commissioners that does that, if it's us or another board, would have the right to,
Flexibility.
the ability to use that any way that they wanted to. Not to say, okay, we're going to increase this tax, we're gonna call it a emergency services tax or whatever you wanna call it. And that money coming in is only used for this. I don't like that idea at all because it limits what you can do as a board of commissioners with the money that's coming in. And let's face it, it's tax money coming in, everybody. We should be able to look at everything. for that
Regardless,
money,
it's,
right?
it's tax money coming
A
in.
tax is a tax is a tax, right?
That's right.
Get back to my original thing, I was looking more at, money separate from the taxes, recording fees or recordation. Somehow that would be designed into this, not, I know it takes it out of the pot and it goes in your general pocket. As they come in the future, I was looking, money's coming in that we designate
Well,
above the normal tax rate.
Okay, so again, if you want to create an additional tax, that's one
Yeah,
thing.
more great tax.
Okay, if you're talking about redividing the tax revenue you already have, that's already in your hands. You can make any decision you want on where to put the money. And you could tell me, okay, we're gonna partition our taxes. And I can't tell you, no, we're not gonna do that.
correct.
We'd like to.
But, no, I
Strong
agree.
and suggest.
But the problem in doing that, if we decide to do that, we gotta take it from somewhere else.
But there is no somewhere else.
No, I know, but that's my whole
Right.
point is, if we decide to do that, to where you were going,
I'm just asking
something else
questions
would
right
have
now.
to, no, I get it, but something else would have to either completely go away or where that revenue is supporting, like ag preservation or like other discretionary dollars that we have.
The problem with that line of thinking though, Ed, is we don't have a lot of discretionary
I
spending.
agree,
They're gone.
I
We're-
agree with you.
We are very, we're svelte here in Carroll, okay? There's no fat that I've ever seen,
Yiddish. I
right?
agree.
There isn't any fat. I mean, there's not something that you can take out and say, yeah, we're doing this for the citizens. I don't think they really need it. Let's just throw that away. There's nothing like that, which gets back to the point of if we need and if the citizens want us to do everything that everybody's asking for, what does that mean?
How do we use one-time money and transfer it into ongoing money for the next 5 to 10 years? Is that even a feasible approach? If
My
we-
answer is no.
Okay, well, that goes into my line of I was going to go into that line of questioning here. But you never did get a chance to finish, Ted.
And we probably should just move on from there. But I just want to capture 2 points that you made at the end there. And this goes to the heart of the difficulty of working through this process. If we want to find in the existing pot of money, more money for something over here, it can only be done by taking it away from something over there. There's no way around that.
Exactly.
And then to the other point, there are no easy places left to take away from over there. There's nothing that we're going to stop doing that some or all of you aren't going to have an argument. Well, that would be a really bad idea, or that would be really stupid, or no, we're not going to do that. We have no easy way this now.
So, okay, you done now, Ted? So the fact remains, in order to do what is being asked of us to do, I believe we owe it to our citizens to look at every option.
Correct.
So, you can go right down the list. Carroll County Public Schools wants $5 million more.
In addition.
Okay? Ongoing now, not just one time. Law enforcement has asked for $4.5 million. Ongoing now, not just one time. So now you're up to almost 10 million extra dollars. Okay? If you include everything else in here that's being asked for, because I'm not sure how you give to one and not the other. Who makes that choice? You get a nice little coin in here and flip it at midfield? I don't know. Then what would that mean to our citizens with a tax increase? What would the percentage to each household be? and there's the coin. So that option, that's the only option that I see right now in order to give everybody what they want or think that they deserve.
Right, if the tide comes in, it's gonna raise all boats. Simple as that.
Correct.
And
So-
so let's look at some of the low hanging fruit, saying, we just can't get there. Schools, everybody wants to support the schools. The 6 million additional ongoing money, there are other opportunities for the schools to go after money that are being recognized from the feds to the state. We just don't have it. And every one of their priorities, and Dr. Lockhart, knows this, at least from me, I agree with every one of his priorities, 100%. Special education, the summer school, the techs and all that. We do not have the additional revenue to apply towards the schools. They have other ways of getting it. We can advocate for them. We can do whatever we can with Dr. Salmon and the state, but from the county. So if we're willing to say, as a placeholder, take that off the table, that
Well-
would be one. And that's a huge chunk.
It is a huge chunk. I get that. I mean,
And I
You
don't
know,
want to be
it-
called we're against schools because we're not.
right. And put that line of thinking to our citizens.
Right.
I would suggest, and I may be wrong, I've been wrong quite a bit, but I would suggest that from those folks that we're hearing from, they're very comfortable in their personal life and they're making a very good income. The ones that are saying, you got to give everybody what they want. What they don't realize is that on the other side of that coin are thousands of citizens in this county that are still reeling from the pandemic.
Mhm.
And were reeling, quite honestly, before the pandemic. Because we've got such a diverse population here. And we've talked about this before. And this is no disrespect to anybody, but if you go from the south part of this county to the north and look at both and see the difference in both, it's incredible. And it actually is kind of awesome because for a county this size, you've got that variation
Yeah.
of people. But you got to remember that, if you think, I love the folks that keep saying, well, a tax increase, well, $125, I can't take my family out to eat for that. What's the big deal? Well, there's folks that $125 to them is a pot of gold. And we were elected to represent every one of those people.
Mhm.
So this is the difficulty that I have. You just can't go based on the fact that everybody's going to be fine. When you hear about, well, let's create a public safety tax, and we talked about that. I think we've kind of went the other way with that. You can't. That's going to be a huge impact to a lot of our citizens that are just barely making it. And let's also remember that we haven't heard from the state yet about any tax increases.
Right.
We kind of maybe have, because Governor Hogan has said there will be none, but the General Assembly's still down there doing their thing. As a matter of fact, they passed that huge police reform bill
Yep.
last night. So not sure yet what that means. Mike's working on that, by the way, Fowler. And we haven't yet seen what the feds are going to do to us. The federal government's probably going to come down with increases. Not to mention the fact that assessments are on the rise everywhere. That's a tax increase to people.
Will the state put a business increase in there for a business license? It's like 3 times what it was, just came out, it was.
Well, and the internet too, Dick.
It was not an increase through the legislature. This was the governor, executive order. putting
Are
that
you
in.
talking about a tax or are you talking about,
It's for a license.
Yeah.
The fees just go
But again, let's get back to a tax is a tax is a tax. I mean, let's be clear.
fee. But that was an executive order done and didn't have to be publicized. But
Right.
when you go to pay it, like, it used to be
it's an additional fee.
whatever, now
Right.
it's 3 times what it was.
Yeah.
So so it just, I don't want to be giving a sermon here, but if we, even if we would be in agreement that we should do a tax increase for 2022, that in no way fixes 2023, 24, 25, or 26, and so on. So one would think that unless you do a huge tax increase in 2022, you're looking at doing a tax increase of some magnitude for each of the next, how many years? Where does it stop?
To add on to that sermon for a second, and I shared this with Tim Roberta earlier. We're an island. Carroll County is an island. And the way we're surrounded by Frederick County, Montgomery County, Howard County, Baltimore County, all of which raised their taxes, and over the last say 4 years, and with that, their quality of life as far as recreation programs and things like that, was added in. We have a community that hasn't touched those taxes. So it's difficult because folks are comparing Carroll County to other counties and other jurisdictions. I'm focused not doing that. That's why I don't want to raise taxes. I'm focused on comparing Carroll County internally, and I want Sykesville and Eldersburg and Tonytown, Manchester, and Hampstead all to be equal. That's why I'm so pushing roads and broadband and everything else. We've got to fix our own infrastructure and our own community before we start looking in comparison outside. And that's tough. I don't know. You talk about retaining your workforce. It's huge issues. Recruit and retain and not become a sieve, and have our workforce be sieved out to other jurisdictions. I don't know the numbers, to be honest. I know ones and twos, but I don't know is there, specific trajectories or patterns of where people are going? And with those exit interviews, is it quality of life because of, the tax increases in those areas? Is it pay? Is it work hours, which is quality of life? Those are things that need to be looked at. But I think we need to fix our own. I think we need to make our own bed, and start from there. And that's why, like, I go back to broadband infrastructure is so important to me. If we do that, and I'm from the South saying that because I want equality. You're right, diversity in cultures across the board is awesome in our county, but I want equality across our county, and that's where my focus is. So
I've
yeah.
attempted, or were you going to say something, Ted? I'm sorry. I've got a couple questions here. but-
Okay, I just want to touch on two things that came up in that conversation. Commissioner Wance talked about giving everybody what they want. For people who are listening out there, I just want to make sure you understand. I know that's shorthand for, talking about this, but we never give everybody what they want. Even in good times, we don't give everybody what they want. That's never been possible. And in this situation right now, the recommended budget that's already in your hands, you might remember I pointed out the agencies that directly report to you, very little movement in almost all those budgets. And it's not because people don't think they need or want something. We're doing what we need to do. And on schools, just be fair to them on the funding. You talked about pursuing federal funding, which obviously they can and should do. But it's unlikely they're going to find any money out there to support basic ongoing costs. So they might find funding to get this thing done, but not to give salary increases or increase their maintenance budget or something like that.
Okay, well, listen, I'm not speaking for all of you, but I'm pretty sure I know what you all feel, including you, Eric. We want to give everybody what they want. We all do. That's our ultimate goal here, is to give everybody what they want. But we know realistically that we can't do that. So there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. So in the last 48 hours, I've tried to explain to folks why one-time money is frowned upon as being used in the way in which people think about this. So bear with me here a little bit. If I suddenly come into $3 million and I put it into my savings account, and I put it into my savings account based on the fact that for each of the next 10 years, I'm going to take a little bit out to help me function in life. What's the difference in that than using a huge amount of one-time money, well, a reasonable amount of one-time money that we have and spreading it out and using what we need to give some of what is being asked for? I don't understand why that's such a huge detriment to trying to utilize money, keeping in mind that's I don't think is going to stop. I mean, I think the precedence has already been set. The federal government is whether you agree or disagree with it, and I've heard those emails, read those emails too, and the deficit's going whoop way up, and our grandkids are going to have a mess. But I don't think it's going to stop that we're going to continue to get relief funding.
Didn't we do this 2 years ago? Didn't we?
Well, just to a degree. But if you've got $50 million sitting in a pot of money, why can't you take 20 of that, balance the next 5 years, or
Peanut
get
butter
it close,
spread,
which would then be able to be utilized to get some of what we need without this huge problem of a tax increase? Still keeping in mind that you've got some here in the savings account to be used in year 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because you're going to hit a wall. I understand that wall you're going to hit. But honestly, between now and that wall, which is 6 years, the way we do it, don't you think something's going to give? Why are we so concerned about 2028 when we're trying to give folks what they need in 2022?
Well, I have to say, if I can comment on that, and the reason I'm hoping we don't do that, although we might, is because you're going to fall off a cliff when the money runs out. And that's partially why we are where we are right now.
But that's
Because
the
in the
mind.
past-
But your mindset then, Dennis, is we're not going to get any more money between now and that cliff. None.
No, we'll get more revenue. Revenue has gone up, but that's already been figured in. If you look at the projected revenue for the next 6 years, there's an increase every year. But that's why where we are now, because in the past, and Ted hasn't liked it at all, but in the past, we've taken money, one-time money or money we had left over at the bottom line from 1 year and put it ahead to other years. And that balances the budget for those years. But now we get to the point where we were, $11 million basically in a red at FY27. If you do what you're saying to do in 5 years or 7 years, something, instead of $11 million, it could be, $27 million or $40 million.
But Dennis, we didn't know in 2018 when we were doing 2019 and 20 that we were going to have this chunk of change.
But we have this chunk of change. There's a pandemic going on. I mean, we're getting a lot of money that the recordation taxes was completely unexpected. There's a lot of factors that are thrown in. So to think through in 3 to 5 years something, I think is much more risky than, other ways of doing it. If we look at, again, I've been talking about taxes, how I don't like it, but you can't take it off the table because it is a way of looking at revenue. The 3 cents that we took away in taxes, however many years ago, if we were just to put that 3 cents back in and restore just that, that would probably give us around $7 million.
But that's a tax increase.
No, I know. I know.
That ship has sailed. That ship went around the world 5 times since then.
Well,
It's back in port.
it's back. It is. It's back in port because
That's your all time. I was doing that with all ships, right?
I'm a soldier. I don't know what the heck this ship is. But anyway, so if we were to look at, that's much better. And I've hit the SP. But at the end of the day, we either, look at where we can pull revenue, like you said, one-time money, do a peanut butter spread across. I do think we'll fall off a cliff because I do think that, you cannot project. Although I really want innovation to occur for solid waste, I do want all of these wonderful things, but we just can't project it. And we don't have a backstop.
But all signs point to that happening.
Yeah.
I'm a glass half full guy.
Then why not start taxes now and then shut taxes off if that innovation occurs? I don't like that. I don't like that answer.
It's
I
a
don't- I think-
tax increase. You're raising taxes,
I
Ed.
agree. I don't like that. But I'm saying that is a less risky situation. But I don't like
But
what
you're
I'm
still
saying.
increasing the taxes on your citizens.
I know.
And
And
you can call it what you, I love these people that call it, we'll call it a tax restoration. Okay,
No.
that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my
My-
life. A
my-
tax is a tax is a tax. And if we do something more with taxes today, it's an increase. You can't camouflage it with the word restoration.
So, okay, I am playing devil's advocate. I do not agree with what I'm saying, okay? I do not agree with what I'm saying. However, you got to put it on the table just so we can completely discount it. And, at the end of the day, we're either looking at living within our means, taking revenue that we're bringing in and taking away, things that we're spending, or figuring out how to bring more revenue in.
So why not use some of that one-time money
Uh-huh.
and put it aside, put it in a savings account? I'm not suggesting we use every single dollar of one-time money.
Yep.
I'm suggesting because we have a fair amount that let's take $10 million off the table and put it in a savings account or whatever you want to call it. Take the other 40 or what I'm
Mhm.
throwing.
No, that's all
How many
good.
do we actually have? It's
Like 57 million.
56 or something like
Yeah,
that.
56, 57 million,
Okay, so I'm close.
right?
Okay, yeah,
So then-
remember, don't fall in love with that number though, because we still don't know that the year's gonna end.
Say too late.
It's a nice number. I like that number.
Yeah, I understand that too. Here comes my glass full again. Because I truly do think we are going to see that. We didn't think tax revenue was going to go up in the last one. Guess what? It did. And what's going to keep that from not happening? I can't imagine anything. The country's coming back to life. People are going back to work. Why would we assume that tax revenue increase that we didn't think we were going to get is now all of a sudden going to stop?
I'm not making that assumption. I'm just saying we can't say with certainty that the current projection will be right.
Oh, the
we
one-time money.
we just can't lose that 50% of our second biggest revenue is still an unknown.
I
We've made a
got that,
projection.
which is why I am suggesting that we set $15 million aside and put it over here and take the rest of it and throw it across the bottom lines in an attempt to try to get back to where we need to be, which would get us to a point where we could give some of what they're asking for.
That kind of goes back to Ted, what you suggested was taking 20% of one-time money and put it into an unfunded balance or whatever, unassigned fund balance. So basically what Commissioner Wance is sharing is in line with what you said, and then we can
Well-
use the 30 some odd million for whatever heck we want to use it for, right?
Not quite what I'm saying.
Good try, Ed.
That was close. That was close though. But your point is taking money from that one-time money and not using it and putting it away.
Yes. Again, I want to be clear. I'm not suggesting here that we take every single dollar out of that. I want to put some away.
Mhm.
And I also think that this means that we're probably not going to do some of the infrastructure if we would do this, that we have been suggesting that we're going to do. But on the backside of that, I would say to you, I don't think that money's going to get any cheaper anytime soon.
Right.
And if we're going to think about doing these things, now is the time to do it and put that into the mix with our debt service that's going to be incurred as a result of doing that. And off we go. I'm having a tough time not utilizing a pile of money, and this is layman's terms, in the middle of this floor because we're afraid that there's a cliff coming in 2028.
Okay, but it's not just some mysterious fear. I mean, we already know we're $10 million in the hole in 27 before we spend another dollar. You know, and back to your first question, the big question here, why not do this? And for me, it comes down to, it's not that you can't, it's what's the timing of what you're going to do. Because you might remember in our recommendation, we actually brought you something where we're going to pull down on the internal service fund for our health costs. Remember, we put money into this pot. We pay our costs out of that pot. That pot, because we've had good experience, has grown larger than it needs to be. So we pulled out, how much, Deb? $6 million. But that is spread over a number of years.
Well,
until
that's the 6-year period. Then there's another like 3 million after that.
No, I'm not talking about OPEB. I'm talking about the health costs. We
Yeah.
We have it, it goes through like
Yeah. but the first
2032 or
There's $1
2033 or
million
something.
each
Okay.
year and then
Okay.
it goes down.
Okay, so we're taking $6 million out. It's one-time money, but the use of that,
I know.
Sorry, Ted.
but we've spread that in a diminishing way over a dozen years. I don't remember exactly. So then when we get to the end of using that money, there's no impact. There's nothing you need to fix when you get there. If we use this money over 5 years or 6 years, we will have something left to deal with. We're going to have a problem that we created for ourselves. If we balance the plan with one-time money, all we're doing is making it look pretty. It hasn't made the problem go away.
But at the end of the day, we've set aside at least 20% in order to address that, if indeed that is the case at the end of those 6 years, which is going to grow over the next 6 years.
And I guess maybe you're just more confident that somehow things are going to get better than I am.
Well,
I
I
just-
honestly think that they are. I mean, that's just the way that I don't think, based upon the fact that we came through a year of hell and we've come out on the other side of it, not quite yet on the other side, but close, albeit we're getting money that is being created and printed somewhere in a basement.
Mhm.
Right? And that's the only reason we came through.
I understand
Right.
that, but we're using
Exactly.
it, by God. We're not saying, well, we can't use that because it's going to create a deficit in 2030. We're using
I
it.
can't control the federal budget.
If you look at what you're saying, and what I think you're getting at,
But we're using federal money to offset some of the things we're doing here. I'm sorry, go.
that's all right.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we came out so well so far at the end of this is because last year's budget was held flat to the year before, maybe a little bit less. So we didn't spend what we were going to. So that helped us tremendously. Despite another point, if you put, say, 15 million aside and you spread the rest out to make it all even and look good, and we pay, give out what we need to do or what we would like to do. Okay, let's say last 10 years. At the 11th year, you've got that $15 million. What happens in year 12, 13, and 14? Because that $15 million is probably going to get used up immediately because of the size of the cliff that we've created. And that I just have to look at it that way.
Aren't we at a cliff now that was created 10 years ago?
Yeah, we are. If
Right.
we don't want to
And
jump
we're
off.
dealing with it now because we've got extra funds.
Well, we don't.
Well, we do.
No,
If we
not
do
ongoing
what I'm
funds.
suggesting.
Yeah, I understand where you're going. It's just, we don't have ongoing funds. And is this the first time we've had so much of one-time funds?
In my tenure,
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely.
We have.
So
no
why
control
have,
of
so
that.
why have the expectation that this is going to happen again?
Why not?
Well, I don't
No.
think
No,
there's
it's
any,
a
I mean,
legitimate question.
This is a
know,
very unusual situation.
yeah,
we're
so
in.
the expectation that we're going to have this again, I
So let's take advantage of it if it's
Well,
unusual.
because I think we're putting a Band-Aid on something that's much greater. And the
But
thing
you
that,
have no other
but
choice
the thing
here.
that's much greater is time. Well, we do have choice.
What?
Not-
Raising taxes.
Well, that's one, which I don't want. and
What's
none
the
of
other
us do.
choice?
Not spend the money, not support the wish lists that have come in front of us.
So no one gets anything extra of what they're asking for. We hold the line and no one's getting a penny other than what is in the projected budget.
That is.
Which,
a
by the
choice.
way, isn't too bad because there's a 3% wage increase in there, 4.5 or something for law enforcement, I believe. Right?
Four.
Four,
Four.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Geez, I just gave him an extra half.
You just spent $100,000.
Just like that.
Just like that.
But yes, so the short answer there is yes, that is a choice. Now the question is, are we comfortable with both of those choices? And I think the answer is no, maybe more comfortable with the tax choice, don't touch taxes. Are we comfortable with the other? Not quite. So how do we start manipulating that where we don't get too silly?
Which is why I'm suggesting that we do that, Ed, because, all of us had the priority, I think, of fixing
Compensation.
the compensation, fixing it to the extent that there are brainiacs in the Annapolis and in DC that think the minimum wage should be whoop.
Yep.
So now we've got to fix that with our own money. Well, guess what? I'll fix it with your money. You gave us extra money. I'm going to fix it.
We sat here in 2016, looking at 22, like, how are we going to get to this hole down there? I think it was 3 million at that time, something like that, if I remember right. And it was, we took some one-time money, pushed forward, and it has worked.
Well, I would argue it didn't work. All it did was allow us to pretend the problem wasn't there.
Well, other
push
things
it to the right.
happened, and we made it we haven't seen that long here in 22. Now, we may have, if we didn't have this one-time circumstances with this money coming in. However, every year we hit that out year, that sixth year, it's so hard to predict. And you know this, that
Okay, but that's not true. It hasn't always been that way. It's been that way while you've been here. But that was not the norm.
yeah, before we came, it had plenty of money.
No, well, no, that's
No,
not.
we didn't.
It's
No,
not
they
that we
didn't.
always had plenty of money. It's that we were truly adopting sets of services that we said we will be able to sustain for 6 years. The problem is we hit the Great Recession. We were hurt very badly. We've never recovered well. And we have gone years now covering over the problem. It hasn't gone away. And I'm saying, I don't believe it's going to go away. We have a problem. I'm not saying what to do about it. I'm just saying it's not going to go away by itself.
Well,
There are, there are 5, areas, and I'm looking at this chart for compensation. Out of the 5, the Board of Education, the request for their increase is put into our budget, correct? They're not asking for additional.
No, they are.
They're asking for how much additional?
5.2.
5.
But what is,
But that's not for salary.
Yeah.
Oh, that was for salary.
Yes, it is.
okay, well, I want to make a distinction here, though. Remember, you do not fund their salary increases
Right.
directly.
Yeah.
You would be providing them funding that they're
So
going
that
to
they
choose.
could.
to
And they
use.
want to look at salary. And then the public library, it's the same thing. They want to increase their salaries. They want an additional.
Right.
Yes.
The community college, we could take off because of the funding that they're receiving,
Yes.
correct?
Salaries, but they have other requests too.
Yeah, but for salaries,
Yeah. And where's that money coming from that they're using?
State.
what's that? State,
Oh, okay.
what?
Where's the state getting the money to use that? You see, you see.
No, but I'm just, I get you. I'm just
No.
looking at, so county, it's 3% is where we want to go with this, with the county.
The recommendation has 3.55 in the first 4 years and 3 in the last 2 years. And again, that's what you needed to meet the minimum wage law.
And the
It would
ship,
or wouldn't.
It
will.
does.
That's
It
what
does.
as best we can determine what you will need to meet the law.
But the
But
problem
nothing more.
is it doesn't fix the step I'm sorry, here I go again. Sorry. Don't throw anything at me. It doesn't fix the grades
Yes. That-
because we're going to have we're going to have folks that have been here
Right.
for 5 years making the same as a new entry
the
level
minimum
person.
wage. That's
That's
right.
what we
That-
got.
That's
Yeah.
unacceptable to
Right.
me.
Right.
That didn't fix it.
That's dealing with the compression. Now, the I just want to make sure I'm clear. The sheriff's department, right now, it's 4% is
Yes.
what, but they're asking for what?
Another 4.5 million in addition to that.
What would that make the percentage if you have that information or just
Are
curious?
they asking for a 4 to 6.5? Are they asking for a 4 to 6? Do you know?
Okay, well, it's not quite that easy because it's not one number applied to every person. But Heidi, is there some answer that could get them in the ballpark?
Follow Ted's, it's not quite that simple. Really, what they're looking to do is they're looking at those surrounding jurisdictions and the jurisdictions on the comparison chart. And they're trying to see that when we get to the 20-year mark for the employees, that we are at the median for those, of those surrounding jurisdictions.
So what would it be in a ball? I mean, from a 4 to overall, would it be a 6 or?
I would have to, I'm still working through the numbers, so I would have to see exactly what that would be. But somewhere between, depending on the different steps and things, about 6%
Okay,
at least.
so an additional 2%. Not an additional 6%, an additional 2%,
It's
give or take.
still more complicated
Okay.
than that.
No, I understand.
So where did the $4.5 million figure come up?
Yeah,
How did they come up with that figure?
We are still working through that.
Okay, so we don't know if that's a
But it
true
is,
figure or
but
not.
it is based, my understanding is that it is based on what they looked at, which is that those jurisdictions, and saying, okay, these are our competition, they're similar to us geographically, et cetera, and looking at the 20-year step for all of those employees and what they would need in order to get our employees to the median of those jurisdictions.
Okay, and I want to go back to what Heidi said on this. We're still trying to understand how this money will be applied, how this is going to be used. We're not done doing that.
Yeah, because really, if you look at it in if you compare it to what we're trying to do, based upon that last discussion, our HR said, if you give us if you give us 2 more %, we can
Thanks.
prepare the salary structure here.
right.
Well, no,
No?
you might remember one of the last things Robin said to you was, this doesn't fix the problem. It just takes off some of the pressure. So that was not an assessment of what do we need to make it all good. I
Okay.
was just saying this will help.
Okay.
Okay, across the board, what do we need to take the pressure off? For
us.
fire, EMT, police, and our people. What was the number that we need to take the pressure off?
I'm not sure how to answer that. We'd have to define the ending point better to be able to talk about that. But just to give you some sense of the context, just for your employees, I remember when I was talking about the minimum wage and we put in enough to meet the minimum wage.
Right.
But I said, so now your minimum wage comes up to the bottom of
Yep.
your scale. If you wanted to keep all the relationships the same, so move everything, so everything stayed the same.
Right.
So
That number is about $7 million a year.
Right. And
That's
that's
not
where
about
Commissioner
sheriff
Lance was
or-
going.
Pardon me?
That's where Commissioner Lance was going, is how do we fix the compression of the minimum wage to keep the distance of those that are already in the workforce above and beyond somebody just walking into the workforce?
Right, so that 7 million fixes that problem.
Okay,
But that still doesn't necessarily fix the concerns that were shared with you about, are we in a position to attract the people we want to attract and to keep them here? It gets hard talking about this sometimes because there's so many pieces to what we're talking about, and
It's kind of hard to just plug money in somewhere and say, okay, that's it,
yes,
because it's a work in progress.
no,
So-
but it definitely helps. I mean, so we got that. Now we just have to continue to look at kind of where you were going, Dick, was, okay, at the end of the day, how much are we talking about on each one of these 4, pipelines, these 4 workforces?
So I truly think that we need to investigate each one of these options that we've come up with in order to give this a relevant look. And that is, you suggested 2 of them, Ed, a tax increase. What what does a tax increase mean?
Mhm.
It does not mean restoring what they took, what they
Right.
subtracted back in 2012.
Right.
It does not mean that. It means oh so much more. That's only a Band-Aid, because guess what? Next year,
Yep.
another tax increase, because that's not going to fix the problem.
Yep.
Or that's option one, or option two. What was option two? Help me out. I'm losing it.
It is not provide the compensation. It's
Right.
Really
Let
not-
it status quo. What you get, you get.
Right.
And off we go. Which means that the rest of the sessions we've got scheduled, we're done.
I don't
Well,
like.
even
Yeah,
with
go ahead.
option two, we still have that deficit in the out years.
Well, we
have
do.
to
You're
deal
right.
with.
So we still
Even
have
with
to make
option
some,
two.
well, or option three, or an option one in my mind, but option three, take money, put it away for a rainy day, which, by the way, we've got a good bit of money in those areas right now. And then take the rest, throw it out there in an attempt to try to get us somewhere where those 2 out years that you speak of, Dennis, are
Right.
not like they are. And maybe not getting them to zero, because we didn't do that last year, but at least getting them close.
But creating a larger cliff later on.
The cliff is the cliff.
I mean, so
As long as you don't push me over it when I'm at the edge, I'm good.
Somebody's gonna get
it's
pushed
gonna,
over.
it's gonna be, it's gonna be a big cliff. So, I think option 3 in my mind is don't touch taxes. Look at the salary and compensation. Don't make it flat, but start looking at, okay, if not a total amount, what parts can we get to using some of this
Yes,
one-time
that's
money?
option
Because
3.
it's not going to be an all or nothing. And, yeah,
Point of clarification, a tax increase takes 3 years to implement, is that right? It doesn't,
No.
boom, hit it at once?
Now, property tax takes effect on the next assessment. Income tax, because you have the tax year is the calendar year, you have a half-year mismatch. So you get half of the benefit the first time, and then you get the full benefit after that. And then Deb just did a little work to answer a question you would ask about the sheriff increase. What's $4.5 million mean? On the amount of total pay Sheriff Detention Center, $4.5 million would be about a 30% increase.
On what, how much?
30%. So if the payroll is $10 now, it'd be $13 after that.
Okay. Can I just add one thing to that? 4.5 million that they are requesting is not just salaries. It does include overtime, pension, payroll taxes. There are other things in that 4.5 million. So
Okay, so
it's
that's
not,
important.
it's not going to be 100% dedicated
Right.
to
just bear with
salary
me one second.
increases.
But it's still,
Will the salaries and other things offset some of the overtime or no? Will the overtime still be needed with other things that they're putting in?
Overtime would still be necessary, yes.
So, okay,
Right, this isn't about more people.
right.
So that 30% change in payroll is overstated.
And we haven't even touched the people.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can back out those other things and tell you a better number there. Wow.
Okay, thanks, hon.
And I just want to note that Ted does open session math better than I do. He knew that $13 was a 30%, opposed to my 2% earlier.
But that honestly, that's just expected. So,
Just a little levity.
okay.
Mr. Oh, Eric, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I've been watching and listening, trying to learn as much as possible. I want to commend Commissioner Wance for making a comment about the negative impact that any tax increase will have upon our low-income families within our county. Both Commissioner Wance and I have some of the lowest income precincts in the county, so I think we're very much in tune with how negatively that would impact those households. I appreciate bringing that point up. The second thing I think is the ghost in the room over all this that hangs over us large is inflation. And the fact that inflation is kicking in needs to influence how we structure our long-term strategy with the financial planning, which means the cost of everything is exponentially going up. I, as a businessman, have just am going through the process of revising and increasing the pricing of all my products. And our vendors out there are going to do the same thing to us. So I think long-term, this is different than normally how I would think, but since inflation is a new factor, we are better off investing and spending as much of the cash we have on hand on one-time infrastructure projects to prevent the escalation in costs in the future and reduce the bonding of them. And if at all possible, I think that any of that money we have to pay off more of our existing debt would actually free up of more ongoing money in our budget. And I give the analogy before to some individuals on staff is, if you have no mortgage, you have more ongoing capital with your daily operations, or at the very least, reducing your mortgage. If you drop your mortgage from $2,000 a month to $1,000 a month, you got an extra $1,000 a month for your ongoing expenditures. So I think it would behoove us and be wise to pay down more debt, which would convert into more money showing up on our budget for ongoing expenditures, and investing in as many one-time infrastructure projects as possible now. And that's just my 2 cents on that.
But your 2 cents went up to 4 cents based on inflation.
So, couple things. One is, yeah, I think we're all getting to a point in complete agreement about taxes that we do not want to increase taxes. And that's becoming more and more clear for all of us, which of course I appreciate. Ted, 2 questions that Commissioner Boucher brought up, get clarification. One is currently, how much debt do we currently have? And is there value in reducing that debt currently in our budget? Number 2 is, what are your thoughts about inflation? That was brought up because I've heard it a handful of times. Is there expectation that inflation will occur dramatically at this point where we are needing to consider and adjusting or making decisions on our budget?
On the debt, we can't actually pay down our debt. Now, from time to time, we refund debt issues, but that has to be done, as a process that meets certain requirements. If we wanted to reduce debt service, our path to do that would be to use cash on a project that we're planning to sell debt on now so that we don't build up any more debt service. On inflation, I think it just depends on who you listen to. Yeah, I read a lot trying to see what people are saying out there. And I've seen arguments why we should be afraid inflation's coming, and others saying fears are too great. And I don't know enough to tell you what's going to happen.
I mean,
as far as our plans, what we try to do is react to what we actually see happening. If fuel prices are going up, we start changing how we're budgeting them. If the cost of salt goes up, we start changing how we're budgeting it.
All right, we have X amount of one-time money out here. What about bond money that we could use for projects here? What is the number there that would be what we have on that? I mean, Rob indicates to us many times we need to bond some, and I know we have the East Middle School, I guess this year, we'll have sometime here in the future.
so you're saying increase
What
debt?
would be the level now, I shouldn't ask you this, what you feel comfortable with? What would be the level that we should be maybe looking at for bonding for issues?
Okay, well, there's 2 ways to talk about that. Now, if you talk about debt capacity, there are certain measures that say what's a reasonable amount of debt for a jurisdiction to have. We're in good shape. From just looking at debt measures, you could say, yeah, Carroll County, you could take on more debt.
Which means what? When you say we're in good shape, what percentages or how do you besides being a AAA rated and very proud of all that we're doing, how do you define in good shape?
Okay, I don't have the numbers in my mind. We can get them if you want, but
Okay.
two big measures are what percentage of your operating budget is going to pay debt service, and another is how much debt do you have relative to the size of your assessable base. 10% is a common number for debt services percentage of your budget. We're probably sitting down around 7% or something now. And 2% on the debt to assessable base is a common number. We're probably not much over 1%. The other way to look at this, though, is what can you afford to have? And there, the problem is we have no money. Even if we have the capacity in a theoretical way to take on debt, we have no money to pay additional debt service. So, I don't know, when you say, what can we get comfortable with? What you're really asking is, how comfortable can you get spending more money than you have?
Instead of using one-time funds and spreading it over, like Commissioner Wentz was sharing, and I think I asked it earlier about using debt for the same type of purpose when it comes to compensation. May not be a appropriate way of using it or a historical way of using it, but if we are in such a good position, then why not use the position that we're in? I mean, we're a AAA rated county for a reason. So why not, I won't say just take advantage of it, but why not, use it? I mean, that's,
Are you saying you want to use bond money for salaries?
I don't know.
No.
I have no idea
Well,
what I'm saying
I'm
yet.
trying to understand what you're saying.
I'm trying to figure out where other revenue can come from to put into compensation.
Okay, then you are.
So yeah, I am saying that.
It's a
Again,
reason.
it's the same as my comment about taxes. I do not want to increase taxes. I need to have the ability to discount it completely so we can move on to something else.
Dennis,
That's where I'm at.
I was looking at the idea of, bonding, and we can bond at a very cheap rate right now for some capital projects. And
Money's
take
cheap.
some of these off and
Right.
then use.
Money's cheap.
I just want to know, how much do we have, how much?
Money's
I'm trying to get a picture of
right.
operating capital, how much money we have out.
But I agree, money's cheap right now, and if we could bond and get some of these capital projects together, it'd be great, except with Ted saying, then you got the debt service, and we don't have any money for the debt service.
Well,
That's
which
the problem.
you
with
get
that.
back to my idea and you spread some of that money out, you got it. And,
So-
and you back up what Eric says, because now's the time to build and not put it off, because we talked about this the other day, Dick. A sheet of plywood went up, what, 150%?
Yeah.
Something
all wood
ridiculous?
products, so.
And that ain't gonna
Construction
stop.
material
But that's not necessarily an inflation issue. That is
shortage.
a shortage
Yeah.
issue because of where we're at right now.
Right.
With
But
everything. So
and that might
because-
come down, but
yeah, I mean,
I don't
as
think
far
it
as
will.
inflation, just like I'm not a doctor, lawyer, or economist and don't play one on TV, I don't know enough about inflation. That's why, honestly, I'm looking at you, Ted, to let us know, should that even be a factor in the discussion as we're dealing with this?
Well, I think it needs to be on our minds.
Yeah.
But the people who are economists don't agree. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody.
right.
You talk to Anibon and he'll tell you one
Well.
thing, and you talk to, the name just went out of me. And they're both saying something completely different.
Yeah.
Both of them are.
So that's
So,
what,
but I think it is a valid point,
Yeah.
oh, yes.
and having a businessman that is deep in that right now is an advantage. And I'll give kudos to Commissioner Boucher for bringing that up, because that is something you got to think about. It's got to be in the back of your mind as you do all this, which gets back to my option 3 that I keep going back to. I mean, because we would still be noting inflation and keeping it there by taking a chunk of that and putting it away. So it's not like we'd be saying, well, whatever, we'll deal with it when it gets here. We'd still have that chunk along with the rest of the chunk that we have, by the way, which is a pretty good chunk, to do something with if that proverbial cliff comes up.
Well, actually, I have to say, I only think there's 2 options, really. Your option, we'll call it the Wayne's option, option 3, or a tax increase to cover all this. And those are the only two options I actually see. Because I don't like your option, to be very frank.
Well, I know you
don't like
don't. I know you don't.
pushing out like that, because I do think we're gonna be falling off a cliff in 10
Right.
years or whatever it happens to be, and I do believe that will happen. I don't like the option of increasing taxes either.
So what's the lesser of
But I
the
don't-
two?
You're exactly right on that one, and I don't have the answer to that, because in 10 years, who knows what it's gonna be. For the short term, your option seems to be like, yeah, the way to go. But it's a short, it worries me, it really does. I wish there was
listen.
a viable third option, I don't see it right now.
Yeah, listen, Dennis, I am right there with you. It worries me too. It really does. I mean, I've got four grandchildren in this county. I grew up in this county, okay? And my family's going to be here forever. And it worries me. It worries me what the feds are doing. I mean, they're printing money every single day in the basement somewhere. All of that worries me. But we've got to make do with what we've got right now.
So that's the third option, is
And
not spend
I
any
think,
more money?
I think it's a viable option. If we put something away, we try to get close with 2, 3, 4, and maybe 5, but I don't know that we're going to get to 5, 6, and 7 and get them. We didn't do it last year.
Let me give you a little bit different way to look at this. And
Well, I
it
knew you were
goes
going to do that, Ted.
a long way toward going where you're going.
Okay.
No, it's happening.
Okay, first, absolutely agree with putting money aside. And I hope we had talking some more about
And I
that.
did that for a reason, Ted,
Make me happy.
to make you kind of happy.
Thank you. Hope we talk more about that, but I think everything else aside, we need to be looking at that.
If we put it all away, would you be happy?
No, I'm not suggesting we should.
Okay, good.
We should, and in fact, we should not put that much money
Right.
away. We don't need to do that.
Right.
Thanks.
If we make spending decisions that leave us with negative balances, and we almost certainly are going to, I don't see any way we end up balancing this plan. I'm not so much arguing against that, although I think we have to be careful to really work to minimize those negatives. You know, I don't want us to drift into a thinking that, well, we've already got a negative. If it gets a little bit bigger, maybe that's okay. What I'm arguing against is using the money to balance those and allow ourselves to ignore that we have negative balances. I'm saying if they're negative, just leave them negative. Let us look at that and say,
Call it what it
here's what
is.
we're up against.
Well, okay, but I don't like that. If we've got the money to not have negatives, except maybe on those last 2 out years, then why not get away from just accepting a negative? I don't like accepting negatives.
Because
We
the
recognize
imbalance is still there. You haven't made it go away. We
Yes,
still
but-
have committed to more services than we think we're gonna have money to pay for.
Well, I don't look at it as more services. I look at it as maintaining the existing.
Oh, yeah, right, I agree. But I'm
So that's
saying
not
that
more, it's maintaining.
it's greater expenditure than projected revenue. I'm
Well,
not saying it's more
look,
services.
you and I will agree to disagree on that. I look at it differently, and I liken it back to what I said when I started this conversation in personal sense. You know, lots of times I'll compare personal life to what we're doing here. And while it's certainly bigger, it's similar. Again, I will ask you, if you get, all of a sudden, you have a windfall and you get $4 million and you throw that into your savings account, or you go out and buy a yacht, you could do that. But if you put it into your savings account, okay, with the intent that you're going to, that it's going to earn money, but yet you're going to draw out of it as you need to use it in order to make things work in your life. Tell me what the difference is between what we're doing there, or what we're thinking about doing here, and that in when you put it in layman's
Well,
terms.
first, the proportions are different there.
I
what
understand.
we
I said
talking
that.
about
I
here-
gave that disclaimer at the beginning here.
Okay, but it's gonna matter. You know, say somebody's making $100,000. The windfall that we're talking about here might be $10,000. So what we're saying is, you have an extra $10,000 and now you're gonna pay for your mortgage or pay for your car. Now, let me back up. Right now, you're in a situation where your ongoing expenditures exceed your $100,000 salary. Right now, you don't know how you're gonna pay for it. You've got $10,000. That doesn't change your underlying situation. You might be able to squeeze through for a couple years, but the problem is still there.
I understand that, but in the interim, you maintain what you're doing by dipping into a little bit of that in order to make things work.
And yes, you can do it. All I'm saying is that does nothing to acknowledge that you have a problem. So unless you believe that you're suddenly going to get an increase to $150,000, then you're still stuck.
I would argue that we are indeed acknowledging that we have a problem by using one-term funding in this manner.
If we go through what you're saying, and let's just, go through that exercise, and say we have $30 million or $35 million, whatever number we decide to come up with, and start breaking it apart, for ongoing funds, like you suggest, and focus on the priorities, that we came across or that we agree on, in addition to one-time funds needs, because that's what that money's also used for. Where are we going to be left at the end of the day? I don't want to get back to where Commissioner Frazier says, but let's start making those decisions as placeholders to see even if it does get us somewhere down the road where we need to be. I am concerned about falling off that cliff. I really am, but
As am I, Ed, but I don't know what.
I understand, but that's okay. Let's go through that exercise.
At least this gives us a viable option.
I
here
agree.
In an attempt to try to get some of the needs met that are
I agree.
in our faces.
And let's put it up on a scenario builder.
I agree.
About the things
That's
that we
right.
would like to see done
Let's do it.
and see what it comes out to.
Yeah.
And then we can see if, we just have a more realistic idea. If we want to give the 800,000 ongoing to our people, which is the extra 2%. If we want to give the library, we want to give the sheriff's department, we want to give the school system, let's put that on a scenario builder, see what that does to the bottom line. Just for now, and then see how plugging in your money is going to affect that. Because until we see the numbers up there, it doesn't mean as
Or
much. But
philosophize.
because I actually want to see where it is
Right.
in the out years and how we're going to drop. I think that'll make it more apparent.
I want to go back to the last thing Commissioner Wance said, because I think this hits, maybe it's a different way of looking at it that hits on what I'm trying to say. Having this windfall and using it to balance the plan doesn't put us in any better position to spend any more money. When you say this gives us a chance to do some of the things we want to do, it doesn't, because you still don't have money to continue paying for those in the future. And then the other thing I should have said earlier, when we talk about the situation, don't forget, we took on a big new ongoing expenditure here. It's like, for the personal situation, it's like you just bought an expensive car with a big payment. And now, right now, we don't know how to pay for that car.
Right.
Well, that's my point of putting it up there.
Right.
So let's see what it is, because I agree with you 100%. If we don't have the additional money to do anything else with, but we all want some things done, let's put it up in a scenario builder up there and see where that puts our bottom line.
Right.
Because I get the feeling that if we put that stuff in there, that within 2 or 3 years, even with plugging it in with one-time money, it's not going to balance it out.
Okay, so say that it doesn't.
Well, let's see what happens.
Let's see what it looks like.
But at least, at the very least, we can get a couple things accomplished that we feel are incredibly important.
Well,
And I don't think that anybody could argue that this salary issue is not important.
Yeah,
Knowing, of course, that we're not going to get the whole way here. I want people to understand that. Just because if we do that, and this might go to your line of thinking, Ted, just because we would do this doesn't mean we're going to get everybody everything that they want. But maybe we can get that delicate balance by surgically infusing a little bit of this stuff to get part of the way.
I agree. I think, no,
Okay.
you're right.
Let's put up there what we think we want to do.
And then we'll decide whether we're buying a McLaren or a VW Bug.
Now, what funds we looking at? What we have, the 8 million this year?
I think a good way to start is all of us
Mr. President,
agreed on the compensation.
could I suggest we take about 10?
So we either take 10 or we reconvene at 1. You want to go to,
I don't know if we,
we're
are you all
scheduled to go back.
prepared to do what we're looking at doing, or would you rather have a break to get set up to do this?
No, we're ready.
I knew
So
that would be
whatever
ready.
you want to do. One mechanical thing we need to talk about though, right now, we have built into this bottom line, that idea of saving money in the solid waste fund, which
All right, well, I have to
Very
say,
unsettled.
take that out of there because we're not in agreement on how to do that. Would you,
Well, we have to do something until we get the numbers on that. Let's leave it the way it is. That's where you start.
okay, but that's
But
the
just.
way
not
it is
real.
isn't right.
But that's not realistic. That's
Right,
the
the way it
problem
is isn't
here.
right.
And neither is, I will point out, ag land preservation. That should be put back in. And then
Okay.
we go back and start
Alright.
again.
So, okay, and I don't want, I'm not disagreeing.
With this option
no.
3 thing that we're
Right.
trying to do here.
I'm just asking why. Just,
Because perhaps we may not have to touch
Okay.
as much.
okay, then let's take
If
it
we're
out.
going to utilize I'm not going to call it the Wance option, Dennis, while I appreciate that. I think it was all, but to be clear, it was in the back of all of our minds.
No,
It had to be.
Let's take it out.
I just wanted to put it, I
I
wanted
agree.
to throw it out there because it's got to be looked at.
All right.
So this option, and I think 2 might be off the table, so it's either 1 or 2 now, as you say. So let's move it up to 2. I would say we move it up to
We'll
1.
take
but-
that out.
But then we start. Now, let's start.
We're gonna end up.
And
with a
I would
hybrid.
suggest that we start with, okay, what are we comfortable with out of that fund of putting away? And then start matching what our needs would be versus what we have left over after we've put that in our can.
It's 11 o'clock. We can go to 12 and reconvene at 1. We can break at 11:30, reconvene at 1. Is there a?
Can we take 10 and then come back
Yeah.
and work till
Sure.
noon and
And
then
then let's take
Say it
10.
again.
take
take
10
10,
minutes?
okay.
Yeah,
maybe?
motion recess till 11:10.
All right.
So
Second.
moved.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Once again, we are back and let's go for about anywhere from 50 minutes to an hour. We will take a break, recess, and then reconvene at 1 p.m. So where did we leave off? Ted,
You wanted to start putting some things into
That's right.
scenarios.
Yep.
And I can provide you with one updated piece of information. Of course, this is the problem with trying to quickly respond to things is sometimes they don't get fully thought through. But you asked about how much of an increase was the sheriff's $4.5 million.
Right.
We said about 30%, but that was including the cost of payroll taxes and pensions, which shouldn't have been in that percentage. And there's still some things we don't understand about exactly how this will all be applied, but we're figuring 20 to 24% change is what you're talking about.
Okay.
On top.
Oh, yeah, on top of the 4% that's built into the plan.
24% change on top of the 4%.
Right, so this would be change beyond the recommended budget you've already seen, which assumed the 4%.
And that's that $17.3 million or 17.28.
That's the total salary. Or, right,
That's what the cost would be total to increase their salary in what they're
No,
requesting?
no.
I'm getting confused. I'm
Their
sorry.
current salary, with with administration, so it's law enforcement, corrections, and administration.
Right,
It's recommended with the 4%, the total salary piece is 17.3 million. The salary component that we're calculating without the taxes and pension would be about a $3.5 million increase. Okay, in salary. So the 3.5 divided by the 17 million salary number would be a 20% increase in salary. So really it would be 17, for the salary, it would be 17 plus the 3.5. It would go from 17 million to 20 million.
the ongoing increase in dollars is 3.51.
For salary only, and then you have to add another million for taxes and pension.
The total increase requested is 4.5
Correct.
ongoing. Okay. And the breakdown, I see what you're doing.
We're trying to isolate what kind of increase in salary would that equate to?
But you can't do, well, I guess you could do one without the others, but
you can't do one without the other.
you can't do one without the others. It
Right.
has
On
to-
what?
If you mean payroll taxes and
Yeah.
pension,
Right.
if you raise the salaries, those go up.
You have to. So
And that's another, when we talk about things get more complicated, something we haven't even considered here, when, we captured in the dollars here, but when you raise salaries, your cost of pensions goes up as well.
right.
And this is
Okay.
just for the first year.
Would be unfunded liability.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So it is just for FY22 and there's a gradual increase
Right.
across, right?
Of the
I mean,
4%.
There would have to be.
Well, it would go, you would raise the whole base.
Right.
Then it would grow 4%.
So it wouldn't be
Yeah.
4.5 million, it would be 4.6 million or
Yeah,
4.65.
every year
Right.
it would get higher.
Right.
Mhm.
Now, and with the sheriff, the current assumption you have built into your plan is 4% increases. So that number would be going up 4% every year.
Just what I said.
Which is in your, which is in your issue list.
Right.
Here's the 4.5 right here,
Right.
and then that's how it's growing.
Right. But the 4.5, is that a 4% or a 6% increase total?
No, that's what we're saying. It's about a 20 to 24% increase. You're talking about $3.5 million on 17 point some million dollars.
Right. So it's 20% increase in salaries alone.
If you include all of the administrative people, if you do just law enforcement, just certified, then it's at 24%.
And that's where we're still not sure of all the
All
details.
right, but let's say it's just 20%. If you include everybody, it's a 20% increase. Because why wouldn't everybody get something? I'm not speaking for the sheriff, but I was thinking he would give it to everybody.
Yeah.
So it would be 20% increase
Yeah, and
on top of the 4% increase we're already giving them.
yes,
I would suggest we cross that bridge when we come to it. I would suggest that we get off of that topic and
Yeah,
go back
let's
to where
leave.
we are, because, I mean, sitting here talking about that,
We're
Well,
piecemeal
okay,
with
let's
that.
look at scenario builder and see what we
Yeah.
definitely want to
yeah,
put
and
in
then we
there.
can build in
Yeah.
perhaps,
Right.
a reasonable amount.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what reasonable is, but
All right, well, okay, I'll throw something out for scenario builder for the first thing is that 2% for our employees, which is $800,000 ongoing.
agreed.
Which is, oh,
Do you want to piecemeal this and go across getting a concurrence or not necessary?
Well, I think we should get all five.
Okay,
Because
so,
if we don't get all five here,
Yeah.
we're not, I
Yeah.
don't think we should put it on the
Okay.
line, right?
yep, so, Eric,
And keeping in mind again, that these are,
yeah, these are all placeholders.
Right.
So putting the expenditure change of, HR, for county employees. Got a motion second, all concur, all in agreement? Yep, five, good. Thanks.
And as you can see, the bottom line now
Yeah,
has adjusted.
looks much better. Okay.
So go
knock
back
it
to,
off, knock it off, Frazier.
the plug and play. So if you went back to the expenditures
Okay, so,
listing,
Are we only talking about ongoing money right now?
yes,
Okay,
this is,
okay.
yeah, this
This
is
is all
ongoing
ongoing.
because
Okay,
that's,
because there's a couple capital things, but I won't put them in there.
yeah, no,
So-
this is ongoing.
Right.
can we address the sheriff and put that in? That's my recommendation
For the full amount,
for that full
for a
amount.
20% salary
Correct.
increase.
Correct.
your motion is what now?
To put that line in, the expenditures.
Let's see
At
what it
this
looks
point.
like.
I mean, just put it in its place.
Okay, I got a motion second. Do I have concurrence?
Sure, throw it in.
Yeah, we can put it in there. I think we're gonna have to come back and,
Oh, of
because
course.
we're gonna run out of money here really, really
Oh,
quick.
we were out of money already.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
but I mean, yeah, see,
We're
Yeah.
almost out.
Yeah,
well,
we are out
we
now.
are,
Yeah,
we're down $1 million.
FY 27 looks marvelous.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to throw in the Carroll County Public Library. They want additional funds for salaries,
But we're
much
already,
smaller amount,
but we're already giving them 3.5%.
but their 3.5%, as I understand it, is overall, it's not 3.5% for salaries.
Well, it's however they use it.
I know, but they have other expenses besides salaries. They cannot give that just for salaries. If you're looking just for salaries, that's what it is. I mean, if you're looking at the two things we put in so far for our people and for sheriffs, that's just salaries. This is just salaries.
Yes, what we recommended for the library was a 3% increase in their funding, but
Right.
we don't say how they use it.
Right, they have other expenses besides just salaries, so that 3% is not just for salaries, it's for other things, and they have legitimate expenses.
Okay, and of course, you can add to that assumption we've had in there, but just on the line of thinking that gets you there, your whole budget is going to go up something like 3%. So if you fund salaries, you're funding it within the 3% growth you have. So it's not really fundamentally different from the situation that they have. They're
Right.
seeing a 3% increase and face the same pressures that we do.
I mean, I throw it out there, you guys don't have to jump on it.
And what's reflected here is, would allow them to fund a 3.55% increase. If they also are asking that if we give anything more than that, that we would consider giving them the same increase as county employees.
Anything more than what?
3.55, like, right now, we have recommended for the county staff 3.55%. If we give the 2% increment, they're asking
Oh,
that
for
they
the-
get a
okay.
2% as well, and that is not included in this number.
Okay, I see.
Okay?
I'm not up for that one.
Right.
Yeah, I got a different way of looking at this, but whatever. I'm,
I don't like this one.
I don't like,
All right, we can
I
take it
don't,
off.
I don't like this route of travel right now.
Well-
I said that we try to use some of this one-time funding to get as close as we could to the once. The bottom line now is showing the entire want. This was not my intent. My intent was to use that money, if we're going to do it that way, to get somewhere close to what they're asking for. So
we have
if that's the case, then I would suggest that you cut in half what the BOE's asking for
Well, we
and
haven't put that on there yet.
what the sheriff's asking
Yeah,
for,
this
not the
isn't
full
even-
amount.
Right, but we haven't put the Board of Education.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So,
But I would have taken it and said 50% of each of the asks.
Okay. Good throw that.
so
And I'm not trying to be, look, I understand the importance of all these jobs. A 20% pay increase?
I would have to say, I
I
agree.
mean, I understand trying to get close to where they need to be. But I also understand trying to phase it so that we can get closer. And realistically, I don't know how in the world we're going to do this even using one-time funding. Because now we're completely out of
one-time
what I
funding.
would suggest of that one time.
Right.
And we haven't done anything.
right.
Yeah. And that was my point for putting this up here.
And I wanted to say all get some, not all get all.
So, yeah, and I think there just needs to be a few different models of how we're doing this. I mean, I don't think we're gonna
I mean, this
have
gets
the ability to solve this in one model.
and some of the problems that I'm having here, and again, doing this on open camera is what it is, but I know that there were savings realized with the library system because they were closed.
Correct.
So is that savings realized and where did it go? I know that there were savings incurred at CCPS because the buildings were closed. Transportation, energy. Is that taken into account when they ask for this?
I'll quickly jump in and say, I don't think we can cut the Board of Elections request in half. I think that's all have to stay that since it's a direct salary.
Yeah, we're not splitting ours in half.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting that, Eric. Those, I mean,
We have to put those in.
we have to put those in, and I agree. We wouldn't do
yeah.
that because that is what it is.
I think that's an easy one is
Yeah,
those election, positions. I think we have to put them in.
I'm just trying to come up with scenarios here that I feel are realistic.
But I don't think I agree. I don't think we're gonna see the realism until we get through this and see a bottom line.
Right.
Um,
And I would even suggest, I don't know. I mean, we can round that off. I don't know. I don't know. I've still got
you put
questions.
those in, right? Those election positions?
No, we have not.
Yeah,
I know you talked about it, but we didn't take
we need to put those two positions into it, the election positions. I don't think we're gonna have any flexibility on that,
No, that's a little
unfortunately.
bit different scenario there.
Right.
They absolutely dictate what we've
Right.
got to do.
Exactly.
Just to be consistent, do you want to actually take a vote?
Okay, that's my motion. Is there a second?
For what, the election? position?
Election positions.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, talking about the election positions, we're all good? Okay.
Now we're in the hole.
Well,
Okay,
Well,
did you-
we're not as much in the hole as we were before.
But you didn't cut in half the.
no, not yet. Not yet.
Right, the sheriff's.
I don't agree with
Right,
that.
okay.
I think we should leave it right now.
Does that give the sheriff 10%? instead of 20? So-
No, that's 20% right there.
Yeah, we should, yeah, but we're talking about cutting that in half.
I'm merely suggesting
we're
it as
talking
a
about
scenario here to try to get it to where,
Right.
I mean, I truly understand, and I of all people appreciate the work of a public safety person. But I also, with the realism of where we are with our budget, we're almost pitting a lot of people against one another. I mean, a 20% increase is like, I don't even know what the word is.
It goes back to my thoughts about being on an island. It's because the comparison of the surrounding opportunities and
Well,
jurisdictions.
I
and
get
communities.
that,
I mean,
but
that's,
I also get that if we give them some of what they're asking for based on our budget situation, it gets them a lot closer. And maybe we can get the rest of the way in the next year or two. I don't know.
And I mean, if you look back to FY19, we gave them a 9% budget increase for salaries. Then, no one else got it. Everyone else got with the standard with 3%.
I'd like to add in defense of the sheriff's department's requests. They are under extraordinary pressure right now with legislation coming out of General Assembly, the overall culture of defund the police. It is a tremendous struggle to get any man or woman that wants to go out and risk their lives, potentially risk their personal liability with new legislation coming out, or those individuals that work for the correction office that go in that facility day in and day out. That is a tremendous mental strain on anyone that holds that job, and it burns them out. We have to compensate them. Their positions are far different than any other county employee. And I assure you that the rest of our county employees would not want to go in that detention center and perform that job. So any avenue we can have to increase the proper recruitment of that personnel and the retention of them is the best thing we can do. So I want to do everything we can to help them out.
So what are you suggesting?
Well, once we move these things around, I really want to look at how we can use some of that long-term funding to pay down debt to free up ongoing capital.
We already discussed
but
that.
yeah, but what, so a couple things. One is, I don't think you're going to hear any argument whatsoever about the importance of the sheriff and the sheriff's department and the work that they do. I'm not going to put myself in a position where I'm comparing them to others, at this point. I mean, that's not necessary, but their importance is second to none. But getting back to what Commissioner Frazier just asked is, so what are you suggesting on compensation for the sheriff at this point?
Well, let's start out with, I guess the idea we're doing now is to throw it all against the board. And then once we have the full view of everything, then we can start whittling it down and figure out how we can get the fit. But start with the very large view of everything. What we're doing, putting up what they want, and then we can negotiate this down to where we can be and what's acceptable and in balance.
Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Is there
Except the CCPS isn't in here.
No, I apologize. I'm still on the sheriff. So that's where we are right now with the sheriff's department. Is that where we're staying? Is there been, because there's discussion on changing that?
If you're going to do it that way and throw it all in there, which might not be a bad idea. And then as we come back and try to plug some holes with some of that, whittle it down to where it's a little bit more reasonable, then you do go all in. So which means you got to add another 5 point whatever million for Carroll County Public Schools.
Well,
because
let's get back to the library that was suggested. Do we have a second on putting the library in or not?
Yeah. My only reservation, I'll second it, but my only reservation is, of course, did you all do that when you were looking at the library? Whoever has the library, was savings accounted for as a result of shutdown?
Not by us. We plan for them as things are for a 3% increase. It's not 3% minus what they might have saved during a year.
So I would think that they had significant savings, but or some savings, not significant, but some savings, because These buildings were closed for
Mhm.
a long time.
You know, even if there were savings, remember that's one-time
I know.
money. I mean, they can't
Yeah, I know.
give us their salary increase.
Okay. Well, I seconded it.
Yeah, so any further discussion on putting that money into the bottom line? Okay, seeing none. All in agreement?
Yeah, I seconded, so I got in agreements.
Against?
And then I would,
Hold on, I'm against this.
okay.
So 4-1, it goes in.
All right.
Oh, were you against? Yeah. Oh, I apologize. 3-2.
Okay.
Chopped liver. Wrong finger.
So I would suggest if we're all in at this point, if this is if this is the direction that we're taking, then you should put CCPS in there.
All in?
Absolutely.
Well, that's how we're starting, yeah.
Yeah, and then we
Right.
can come back.
But it's
we
not
can't
all,
say
but
that
that, all
right
that
now.
money's not all salary. Was it?
Well,
Is that all, is that money all
No,
salary?
because
That's up
we-
to them how to use it.
Now,
No, but they broke it into 3 categories.
Okay.
So why not focus, if we're gonna do it, on compensation, not,
because
mean-
we don't fund them. This is a big debate across the state in every jurisdiction about funding the individual school
by line
systems
item?
by category.
We should.
And there's not many that do.
I know.
And there's
Those
seven,
are so intertwined, you can't go.
there's 7 major categories, I think, in most jurisdictions of education
Yeah.
funding. And I, unless you want to go down that route, which is going to be extremely difficult and add more to our
We can't.
back and forth.
No, and actually, my memory is that not all salaries are even in one category. They're split up in different things,
Those
so therefore
categories
that'd be
are
almost
posted
impossible
hours
to
and
do.
Personnel is intertwined in this one, and this one. and
Right.
this one, and this one. You'd never tear that one apart.
And I don't think that we can say to them, look, we're going to give you 3 million, but it must go to salaries,
Right, we can't do that.
Right.
because then there, you got to,
No, I get
you
you.
got a bargaining, 2 or 3 bargaining units and blah, blah, blah.
Well,
But in practice, if you give them money now, it's almost certainly going to be going to salary.
But the expectation
Yeah.
is, how much money are they getting from the state?
They're essentially flat.
Getting 100,000 more than
That's
last
it?
year.
100,000 more than they got from memorandum of
Okay.
understanding.
And
However,
Okay,
there's
stand corrected.
other state funds came in, was 8 million to COVID CARES money, I think, is that right?
It's
Ted?
still.
I don't know, but yes, they are getting other money,
Yeah.
but all targeted. There's not discretion on their
Their
part on how
summer
to
school
use it.
program, all those things are paid for through all this. And
however, I will say, I believe that they took some of that CARES funding and hired people.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they did.
You're probably right, but they wouldn't necessarily be long-term employees. But I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know that
Yeah,
either, but
contractual.
Okay, so
so I hire.
do we have a motion to move that Board of Education in full
Now, this
across
is
2
ongoing,
expenditures?
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's all
it's ongoing.
ongoing. Is there a
Which
motion?
is why we're going to have to come back and revisit this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is going to get us to, 35 million in
This
the
is
hole.
what, Dennis, you were talking about. You wanted to see
Yeah.
what the figure is.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
unless
You'll
we have
see-
that in front of us, we don't know.
You'll
Right.
see how big that cliff is.
So based on that mindset, then I would move that we put all that money in there.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there
I'll
a
second based on
There's-
that mindset.
There's a motion and a second based on the mindset of Commissioner Wance. Going with the mindset of Commissioner Wance with the motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0.
Okay.
Not sure what that mindset was, but
Yeah, I'm
It's
not
all
sure
in
either
there.
at this point, I gotta tell you.
it's gonna be, I was
Yeah.
thinking it was gonna be like 32 million.
Okay.
It's not
Any-
as bad as I thought.
Is there anything else on that? Is there, yeah. Okay, is there anything else on that? Can you go back up to that list?
Can we-
Ongoing.
Can we buy like 1,000 Powerball tickets?
Is there anything below the Historical Society, Deb, that we can't see? We did the elections
Yeah.
and the transfer there. Okay.
So I have my paper.
I mean, I'd like to give something to the Historical Society as well, but they've got a lot of,
And that's not for salaries.
no, that's for
Operational expenses.
operational. So we can come back and do whatever on that, but that's not in the mix right now.
This puts us, what, 7 million in the red?
You're close, baby. You're close.
7
Six
million.
point five.
Yeah, 6.56 for FY 22, but FY 27, 29.436 in the red.
Right.
So
Which is a total of,
a lot.
total up that,
98.6 million.
thank you so much, Deb. That was so wonderful, that figure.
We didn't have enough one.
So a deficit for 5 years of $100 million. And Ted, your recommendation is that we keep seeing the red as opposed to trying to zero out everything. That's your,
I don't,
That's what I believe we
that's
should do.
your recommendation.
okay.
We have to, by law, FY 22 balance, that's 6.568.
Right.
So we need to target that. Huh?
It's easy to balance 1 year.
How are you going to balance a negative of 6.568?
We have one time, I balanced 1 year. It's the out years that get it.
So, see, this is a,
Now you're
this
talking about
accomplished what we
commercial
wanted to accomplish, however,
Right.
because we
Yes,
wanted
it
to
is.
see this number.
It is.
So
Absolutely.
now we got to go back and be realistic if we're going to use option 2, because there's no way that this is realistic.
Or begin to,
No, it's
just
impossible.
begin to look at the hybrid of
Yeah.
using
Right.
one time and
So that
Lessening.
gets back to my comment of some get some, or all get some, not all get all.
salami slicing across the board is never a good thing. So
Well, it is if you tell everybody, we'll give you half of what you're asking for.
Okay, one commonality we all have is the county salary.
Yeah,
Across
that's
the board,
what-
that is,
this is,
we all said that has to happen.
well, I think the commonality is not just county salary, but really is compensation across the county, forces, which include the library, the education, the sheriff, our county government. I mean, it's,
But I would also argue, besides that 2% up there, all those other ones can be taken down a bit. And have to be taken down a bit.
yes,
Yeah, we're gonna have to do
Correct.
that. And
Right.
the other thing that
2%, I feel like we should leave.
yeah, I
That's
do
my
too.
opinion. But
Because,
the other ones,
right.
it's impossible to keep.
Yeah, it is. And the other way of looking at this, and we're gonna mull this over lunch, I get it. But the other way of looking at this too is it also doesn't give such a huge separation between who's getting what salary wise. It gets them a little bit closer to I don't know, a standard or increase as opposed to just, I mean, I hate to say it, but if I could get a 20% increase in a pandemic, I'm going to be dancing like Snoopy did
Right.
on the Thanksgiving special.
yeah, but the roles.
I fully
got it.
understand that.
I understand.
You-
No, I'm not going there. I
I was going to
understand.
say, you know who you're talking to
I
when
understand.
you
I got it.
when
I have
So
to-
if we're looking at the sheriff's compensation, and that's what we're talking about right now, they're getting 4%. Now, instead of giving it 20%, if we doubled the 4% to 8%, which is, I think, a pretty good increase, what would that look like on the numbers?
98% is approximately 200,000. So just for mental calculations, 1% of $200,000.
Which we trust you much more than our administrator. So thank you.
and even if we'd hit 10%, Dennis,
Altogether,
altogether,
but with the 4%, we're already giving them the 6% on top of that is what you're saying.
even if we give them 10%, it's half of what they feel that they need
Well, it's
and
not
gets them
10%,
closer.
because what they wanted was 20% on top of 4%.
Well, I understand that.
So even if, so But yeah, I understand what you're saying. But I mean, I'm thinking if we give them double what's built in, that's pretty generous. You gotta realize, we're Carroll County. Okay, like was pointed out, all the surrounding counties have had tax increases in the past several years. We haven't. You have to look at that as well. Now, if we want to give them close to what they want, and the judge said, there's no other way except a tax increase. If that's off the table, then we gotta start cutting.
Yeah.
And giving them an additional 4% over what they're normally giving, that's 8% increase. I think most people would be pretty happy with an 8% increase. I'd be delighted.
Well, it's a direction in the right, it is movement in the right direction.
Just want to point out when you said we have to start cutting, that we're not actually talking about cutting. We're
Right.
talking about
No,
doing
no,
less
no,
than.
no,
We're cutting
right.
the increases.
We're cutting,
You're right.
yeah,
You're right.
that's right.
Trinity.
And we're not even looking at capital projects. This is all, how are we looking at ongoing funds? How are we going to fund that? If we are to use one-time funds, how are we going to then fund capital projects that we
Yeah,
have?
yeah, because to be very honest, if we do this method.
Yeah, I
This
know.
option, then a good bit of that priority list that I talked about on
Mhm.
Tuesday for me,
Mhm.
it's gone.
It isn't gone if we can use it through debt or bonding or other issues.
True.
And I'm telling you, I'm as committed today in infrastructure as I was Tuesday. I
Yeah.
think we've got to do that for the vision. of
Okay, so
this
this-
county.
Additional 4% is much more manageable than what was up there before. And it's still an 8% salary increase to the sheriff's department. I think that's. a tremendous
Where are
increase.
you looking? I'm sorry.
The last line, sheriff's additional
Right.
4% salary, sheriff's 800,000 this year.
Which would give him an 8% increase?
Yeah,
As
overall
opposed
8%
to
salary. I mean, that's, who could argue, who could say that wasn't good?
Well,
I'd
they're
say
trying to
we're
get, the attempt here is to try to get them on
Yeah.
on par.
But we can't do that right now.
But I would suggest that if we get them to 10%, then at least that helps a little bit more. What's the figure on
Well,
10?
that's the half.
That'd be $1 million.
That's the million, whatever she had up top.
That'd be $1 million.
10, well, it would
Yeah.
be 1.2.
Okay. Which then would be 6%, right?
Yeah.
Which means a total of a
6%.
10% salary increase.
Yeah, right.
What's that do?
So go down to the bottom line, Deb.
Oh, wait, I didn't put that in.
Oh.
I wouldn't.
Well,
She's slowing down here.
For good reason. Every time we look at the bottom line.
I know, she has to change the point in time.
Well, just be careful. If we lose her. you're
Oh, no,
gonna-
no,
right,
we-
right,
we-
right.
We don't want to.
Okay, now, based on that mentality, then I would also suggest that to the CCPS, we give them, with my theme of all get some, we give them 50% of what they're
Well,
looking for.
Yeah, but there's a big difference here. If I can jump on that. I'm sorry to cut you off.
well, no, I just,
But-
we gotta, I want to make sure that we're capturing this and we're making the steps if we're going in a pattern of, putting things in.
Right,
So,
I understand where you're, I get it.
Additional 6% for sheriff's salary. The Board of Education for one step increase, I believe is $5 million.
let's stick.
So you're
let's stick-
looking at,
Oh.
the request for that is, that's one step. That's not anywhere near an additional 6% or anything like that.
This is an addition to 6 million already.
Oh, yeah, I understand it
And,
completely. I'm just
so
saying.
11 million, we're looking at 6, 7, 8 million here, 8.5.
Okay, to make sure we're clear, let's get back to the sheriff. And instead of the additional, what percent was it?
6.
Well, that's what it is now. What was it before?
4.
No,
No, 20.
20.
the additional 20%, now adjusting it to additional 6% into the bottom line. Is there a motion to put that in and take out the other? Is that, am
I
I,
don't know. Could we maybe move away from these motions?
yeah, I mean, do we need to do this way or no?
Why don't we just work through this
Okay.
instead of motioning every time?
Okay, and that's fine, but I don't want to do this. I don't,
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to, I don't want
Well, then
to,
when it comes time to do that, then we can,
So it's a 10% increase you're looking to see.
yeah,
That's what that is.
no, I'm looking to get to where it was before. That's why,
you want to do the
Either-
entire 20%.
yeah, that's what, if we can do side-by-side models, I don't know if that's possible or not. I don't know, like a split screen, so we're looking at one versus the other as opposed to going back and forth. Or is that too complicated?
Yeah.
It just got better when you took that out.
So
And I agree about the whole motion thing, so thank you.
Yeah,
I
I don't-
100% agree.
I'll
Yeah.
second that.
Yeah.
I think we just work to it,
Yeah,
work through it until
I'm-
such time that we
I'm
really
good.
start making decisions.
I'm,
Then we
Yeah.
capture.
no
I mean,
problem.
that's totally up to you. And I think
Yeah.
the only reason we've done that
Yeah.
is sometimes people would say later, I never agreed to that.
Okay, no, we're good. Okay.
Well, here's one and here's the other. I just have to split my screen. This one is with the additional 6%.
Right,
This one is with the,
full 20%.
yeah, so it's 29 million versus 25.
Huh.
Right? So I have something up here that's a lot of money.
Well, Ted, it's only an additional 4 million. Come on, big deal. No?
And this is actually a good place to be, to break, I think, because all this is going to be, the next step, I think, if we're looking at option 2 right now, would be to discuss what's the amount that we would like to set aside.
Well,
Then that gives us the look of what is left off of that, the 56 million I'm talking about. What's the percentage that you want to set and not touch? So, is it 20 million? Is it 30 million? But what is that figure? And then we'd be able to take the remainder of it and spread it
apply.
across each of the years to try to get to the balance, knowing full well that in 6 and 7, it ain't gonna work.
But this additional funds, there's a fund balance from 21 operations. And this have the state money in it too at this time?
That's the state money?
It's come to us, CARES and all
no,
that.
the 32
Money
million.
that's already used.
No,
What about federal? That's
Oh,
projected.
I'm sorry, that's,
none of that would show up in the budget.
None of
that's
that's showing up here.
that's
So,
all one-time opportunity for specific criteria.
so if that comes in, do we have the ability to go back and,
No, that money will, I apologize, that money will come in, but it's for specific criteria, one-time funds. Now, we could use some of that money if we decide for infrastructure.
that's what I'm thinking, we don't use now,
But-
and that comes in, we use.
But that's
some of
not
that.
any of this. This is one-time money that we have within our budget.
Yeah.
Which is the 48.6.
I thought, how comes that, somebody said 56?
Well, we use some of it.
Remember, we talked about, we put almost $1 million into,
That's where it
in our
is.
recommendation, about $1 million into LoSAP.
Yeah,
And we replaced the funding to
Yeah.
roads, facilities, and
Right.
IT
it was
that you had
56,
pulled out of the
Okay.
capital
Yeah.
budget.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
down to what?
48.
48.6.
So it was 56. So, and Ted, your recommendation, not necessarily that we're going to take it, but your recommendation is what percentage of the unfunded, unassigned fund balance should be put aside?
When I talked to you about this, I said 5% of the budget, which would have been about $21 million.
So if you go on that line of thinking,
You're talking about then $24 million.
no, that's 5% of the total budget,
Yeah, that's what you're saying, right?
which is what figure? 20? Would you say 20?
I think we calculated 21.
27,
Yeah.
yeah, it's $27 million is recommendation,
We
which
did
of
on
course we don't
the-
have to take.
Right.
North.
Which means we'd essentially have 20 million left over to do something with.
In accordance with the guidance from our
Right.
director, correct?
And if we took that 5% and put it with the other
Right.
funding.
The operational funds.
What do you
The
call it?
stabilization fund?
Stabilization fund. And what does that give us
The same amount.
with the two together?
Well, that's 5%. So we would be doubling.
So that would give us basically $56 million.
A little over 40 some. Our stabilization is 20 some million. And then if you were to reserve another 5, you would add 21 million to that.
Well, add 21 million,
So it would be
okay.
about 41 million in that
In the
stabilization.
yeah,
Got
between the
it.
stabilization and unassigned fund balance
Wow.
being
Which is pretty
set to the
good.
side.
Okay.
That would
Okay.
be
Okay, remember, part of my thinking on this, though, is when you start adding that up, is just how difficult it is to get to the stabilization fund.
Right,
You know, it really is a last resort place.
Right.
If you do something with this other money, this would be
You can
money
get to
you
it.
could choose to go
Right.
to anytime you decide.
right. Okay. Okay. I think this is a good time to break, seeing these numbers. Why don't we recess now and reconvene at 1 PM? We all good with that? I got a motion?
Yeah, I'm looking. Oh.
Second, motion second, all in favor? Got it. 1 PM.